It's the most sophisticated autonomous racing vehicle ever built.
Oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever.
We started at 10 miles an hour because we were so terrified they would just steer into the wall randomly.
Happening today, it's race day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Here comes Toom Autonomous Motorsport. That is a new record. Polymove accelerating to the outside. Now they crack 169. Yeah!
We did it.
The competition as a whole has gotten more intense.
The goal is to reach higher speeds.
3, 2, 1, go Polymove.
We are so much faster, and also we will race a lot closer.
Break the hill climb records was a really tough challenge.
Just going to get its nose under the beam in time.
Setting a new record is the University of Virginia.
Here they come! Unimore coming to the line! They are going to win it!
With each sequential competition, we are advancing the state-of-the-art in autonomous technology, and we are bringing that technology closer to reality for saving lives, for improving the world with autonomous mobility. We're just at the beginning.
Welcome to the Indy Autonomous Challenge. This one a bit special. They're all a bit special, but this one in particular stands out because for the first time on North American soil, we have autonomous race cars getting ready to go around a track where they will have to turn left and right and navigate one of the most famous turns in the entire world. Hi everyone, I'm Shay Adam and welcome to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. If that video doesn't get you excited about autonomous racing, I don't know what will. Just how far we've come in such a short period of time and just how much further we're going to continue promoting this technology. For this event today, it's also special because for the first time we're running on a race weekend. The Dallara chassis that is the platform for all 8 of these race cars is also going to be utilized in the Indy NXT series this weekend. And IndyCar, the series on which these cars aspire to one day be, will also be racing at Laguna. So it's a very exciting weekend, not only for the drivers in those series getting to see what cars can do by themselves, but for our scientists, our engineers, our minds, our people and humans who get to see what the race cars can do when it isn't all up to the computer. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We've got a very exciting challenge on hand because this is going to be a time trial format. In the past, we've done time trial, we've done passing, we've done speeds, as you've seen in the intro video, but today it's all about which car can navigate the 2.238 miles and 11 turns that make up this legendary circuit quickest. And that program will go home with the honors, the big trophy, maybe just a little bit of a check as well. It's not just me rambling on for this program, though. I'm delighted to welcome in once again my friend Rob Pruka. He's the Kulwicki Professor of Automotive Engineering at Clemson. Rob, welcome back. A bit of a cool day today in Northern California. How has that been affecting the running so far?
Well, Shay, thanks. It's great to be back. And yeah, certainly the weather's a little chilly today. We're looking about 65 degrees Fahrenheit out. The teams will be interested in trying to get their tires warmed up for their first couple laps. And as the tires warm up, you'll see the speeds coming up. It's going to be an important part of the time trials that you'll see today.
It's also a very interesting thing. Tire warm-up is eased by braking, accelerating and braking heavily. You see it often in races when we're behind the safety car, for example. That's something that drivers will often do to try and get heat into the tires. But heavy braking is a new facet for today's challenge, because the last time that these cars ran on a circuit where they had to navigate left and right-hand turns, that was Imola, there were maybe 4 heavy braking points, medium to heavy braking points around that circuit. Today, it's going to be more like 6. So how are the engineers and the minds on the walls having to program these cars to tell them to get adequate heat in the tires?
Sure. I mean, it seems like most of the teams during practice on Monday were running around really just running laps. They weren't really going slow and trying to weave back and forth like you might see in a lot of traditional racing. They'd really just, the faster you can get through the corners, the faster that heats up the tires, and that's the approach that most of the teams were taking. When you talk about braking, of course, if you're new to motorsports, that's one of the most critical things, especially on road course racing where you're turning left and right, is really, a lot of your time is made or lost under the brakes. And these cars are pretty special in that they have control over how much front and rear brake that you can put into them. So the teams are watching this as they go. The one thing you're trying to avoid is locking a tire, especially the rear tires. If you lock the rear tires in a corner, you're going to crash. There's no way around it. And so the teams are watching this all the time. They have sophisticated models that take the data off the car. They run it through those models. They try to see what how on the limit the car is during braking, and if they can brake harder or if they have to be a little bit more careful and maybe back off. And they actually can control this at every corner of the racetrack. Or at least the car is calculating this at every corner of the racetrack.
Yeah, well, that's an important thing to distinguish as well, and we will get into this more and more as the broadcast continues. But as far as these cars are concerned, there's nobody on the pit wall talking to them, telling them what to do. It's all pre-programmed. So as soon as the car leaves the box, the car is doing everything itself.
Right, that's right. So this is a robot you're looking at. It's making all of its own decisions. The only thing that teams can do, they can communicate a couple things, but only on the front straightaway between the exit of the last corner and the start-finish line. They can basically tell the car, hey, go a little faster or slower, or they can tell it to stop. That's pretty much what you can do. But other than that, the car has to make all of its own calculations of what how to run the line, how to brake, how to get on the gas, how to do gear shifting, and obviously how to turn as well. So these are just truly robots. There's a minimal amount of communication back and forth, mostly for safety purposes, but that's it.
It's one of those things that you can never plan for the unknown, but that's what these scientists, these engineers, these brilliant minds, and I'm going to keep calling them that because they are all of these things. They have to try and figure out what could possibly go wrong before the car even ventures out onto the circuit. We've got 8 beautiful race cars lined up in the pit lane from 8 different joint programs all around the world. I say joint because some of them do run solo, but most of them are collaborations from different universities and different institutions. We will meet all 8 of our competitors that are out there on the pit lane today in just a moment, but before we get to that, it's a race day, which means we have some ceremonial features to do first, starting with our national anthem. our nation's anthem, broadcast around the hills of Northern California. It's something that just gets you a little bit more excited, knowing that this is the start of a very long, exciting race weekend. And to get things started, we have to get the engine started. There's a very special guest down in the pit lane waiting to make that happen. That's the official command, and now we are in a position where we can get things going. So before we send the cars out on the track, let's take a moment to acknowledge each of our 8 teams. I'll do it in numerical order, just so that all the people out there who like numbers, and I'm guessing there are quite a few of you out in the paddock, you would be happy too. First up is car number 2. This is Team Purdue AI Racing. They are out of Purdue, Indiana, mostly military members. Their car is gold, black, and white. You can't miss it on the racetrack. Car 4 is Kaist. That is the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. They are out of South Korea. They first started developing a self-driving car back in 2009. You can spot them easily with the blue and white car. Car number 5, Polymove, MSU. This university, Politecnico di Milan, out of Italy, Michigan State University, and the University of Alabama. It's 3 professors who lead the way for this program, which has come home with 4 victories across 7 Indy Autonomous events. Next car is number 7. That is AI Racing Technology. This is a combination of the University of California, Berkeley, out of California, the University of Hawaii, the University of California, San Diego, and Carnegie Mellon. Their car is orange and green, and it originally started as just the University of Hawaii. Next car up is Cast Racer. This is the California Institute of Technology, car number 8. Keep your eyes open for them. They are always quick. Car number 9 is Cavalier Autonomous Racing. That is from the University of Virginia. They were second at our event in Las Vegas, dark blue, orange, and white. Number 10 is IU Luddy. That's Indiana University. Indiana, very much a fan favorite for most people in the IndyCar paddock for obvious reasons. And last but certainly not least, a big fan favorite, Autonomous Tiger Racing. That's Auburn University out of Alabama. They're orange, white, and blue. And Rob, we have a taker to the racetrack, a very cautious outlap. Is this what we should expect to see more of as these robots take to the circuit for the first time?
Absolutely, Shay. AI Racing Tech rolled out into the track just a couple seconds ago, and they are warming up, essentially. They will have 12 minutes to run fast, to run individual laps by the time they hit the start-finish line. So that clock starts when they hit the start-finish line. So they really just take this opening lap slowly, make sure all the systems are working as they expect. They're watching all of the telemetry that's coming off the vehicles to make sure the vehicle is tracking its location as expected. And you actually see as they're going to go under a bridge here, one of the big challenges they've seen all week is that when you go under this bridge, especially up the hill, it's a double-laned bridge. It's also steel, and you're kind of in the middle of a canyon, and you lose GPS. The cars rely heavily on that, especially today. So the teams have to be clever about how they fuse all of the other sensors together on the vehicle, so that way they can keep tracking where they are on the track, even though they lost GPS. And this happens a couple spots on the track. So that's what the teams are watching right now. They just want to make sure, hey, everything's okay. Start to put a little bit of heat in the tires as they go up the back side of the track, and they'll go through the corkscrew and then back down to the front straightaway and get onto their time laps. Now, the teams are really trying to make sure that, so most of the teams will have a goal of around 2 minutes or so that they want to make around this track. If you look at the Indy Next cars that you'll see, I guess you can see this weekend, you're probably talking about 1 minute and 20 seconds or so. The fast cars that we're hoping to see here today will probably be right around 1 minute and 30 seconds. So you're starting to get pretty close to the human-driven vehicles. They are a little bit different in configuration, a little bit different horsepower and things on the vehicles, but this is the goal, right? Is to try to match human performance at some point. And so now it looks like the AI Racing Tech vehicle has crossed the start-finish line, so they're 12 minutes to start now.
And it's one of the things that we talked about earlier, the importance of braking. One thing that a human does, well, I should say competent human drivers, because not all race car drivers have the brain capacity to actually do this when they first start out, but you can actively change the brake bias between different corners when you're not dealing with a human that's limited by feeling the effects of the G-force, being overwhelmed by diving down the corkscrew for the first time perhaps. You have the advantage of being able to pre-program the computers to say, hey, we want your brake bias at 60-40 for turn 6, but maybe by the time we get to the corkscrew, we want it more like 40-60. Is that something that we've seen the competitors playing with yet, adjusting the brake biases for each corner?
Absolutely. Every corner they have a little bit different setting based on the data that they've collected in practice to try to get the car to slow down as much as possible. It's a really critical aspect of what they're doing here. Another thing that you'll see from the kind of a little bit of difference from more traditional racing is that they're not going to hit the little rumble strips. So if you see these kind of red and white lines, they're kind of curbs. They're kind of rough, and they're supposed to kind of make the track, kind of define the track limits a little bit. These cars, they can do that, and that would make a little bit faster lap as they go around. But it also, is pretty abusive on the cars and can shake them pretty significantly. And with all the electronics on board, it's really not worth the risk. And so you see pretty much all the teams will try to avoid those as they go. But as they're going, around the track, they are really, the vehicle is adapting to its ongoing conditions. And even as the tires warm up, the models will change, and the vehicle itself will go a little bit faster. So you can see them heading back down the hill here toward the start-finish straight to finish their first lap.
Yeah, it's a good point. You don't think about that, because when you run off the excess strips, the rumble strips as we call them, the problem is that it rattles your brain a little bit, which is fine when you're a human and you can deal with that. But as a computer, you really don't want things shaking around. So it is smarter to stay off of that excess curbing. And yeah, it does help you get the lap time when you use that, but so does taking a shortcut, for example. And that's not what we're looking to see from these cars. The first lap has been completed. 98.896 seconds. Not a bad opening gambit. We're looking to get down, or was that an average speed, Rob, of 98.896?
I don't have that data in front of me, but I'm guessing this is a time. They are shooting for around 90 seconds is what people are looking at. So, and so I would guess that's time on the screen right now.
It's interesting, though, that there are still stickers on the front tires. So clearly the AI Racing Tech car is being very gentle on its front tires, and the abuse is coming more towards the rears.
Sure, yeah, and they're not fully up to speed yet. I think as they'll watch, they'll as the teams are watching this, they're going to slowly speed up. And as you said, you can see that the stickers are still there. We saw this in practice as well. Some of the teams, it's like they were running a little bit higher air pressure, so the stickers would stay on, especially on the outside edges of the tires a little bit as they were running. But we'll see as they kind of get up to crest the hill here and as they come back down the corkscrew how they manage this. They certainly seem to be speeding up as they went by me on the front straightaway this last lap. You could hear them shifting gears and really trying to speed up. So this lap is expected to be a good bit faster.
It looks a bit like me the first time I went around the car in a street car, and I was told, all right, you can go. It's got the same tentativeness of not wanting to take too much out of the car early on, but still pushing more than most people would be. You mentioned the practice days. There have been many practice days so far this year, and that's one of the great things about this series. The cars are not excessively loud, so it doesn't take away from the allotment that Salinas County actually provides for WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. They were out here May 13th, 14th, and 15th, and then the first week of July every day, as well as the last 3 days. So as far as not having enough track time to really make sure that your car is in a good window, well, that's not an excuse we're going to allow anyone, is it?
That's right. Yeah, these cars over the years, they've put well over 20,000 high-speed miles on them, combined. So that, these teams are doing a great job. And one of the critical parts of all of this is to get data to help train your models, right? So the more miles you can get on there, the more accurate your models can become because you're gathering more data as you're running. It's a really important aspect, but you have to always remember these are students, right? So these are students, student universities, and so every team has a little bit different goal. As I was speaking to them down in the pit lane earlier in the week about what they're trying to do. In this case, with AI Racing Tech, they one of the natural things you see at a university is that students graduate, right? That's the whole goal. We're trying to educate them and push them off into the real world, right? And so they can become more productive, right? And the challenge is that means that you train these students, they become amazing, and then they leave, right? And so you bring a new group in, and then you have to kind of rethink things. And so it's kind of where AI Racing Tech was at. They have a newer group of students. They're doing a great job of coming up online, but they're also this team was working on really rewriting their software completely. So every team does a little bit different strategy about how they run their software. In this case, they're really trying to move to a more AI-based control strategy, which is pretty interesting to hear about. It's a hard challenge to do, and the students will take probably a year or so really to write all that code and to test it out. And so I can see, here they're going to be a little bit tentative because one, it's $1 million car they don't want to crash, and two, it's just they're learning as they go because it's a little bit younger team. A year or so ago, this was one of the very top teams, and they're obviously doing a great job. It's still out there doing pretty quick laps. I guess it was 101 mile per hour average, which is pretty good for road courses.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's our average speed or if that's maybe the top speed that's triggered as they cross the start-finish line, because that was the graphics package we were using most recently when we had the Indy Autonomous Challenge at CES earlier this year. And you talk about the fact that these are students, but the technology is so intriguing to so many different kinds of people that it's not only the students who get drawn into it. We've also had, for example, the DARPA grant that came through recently for $1 million. The government is watching and not in a threatening way, the government is watching in an intrigued way as to what these students are coming up with, and you have to think that would lead to jobs and futures for these young men and women.
Absolutely. Today there was a summit prior to this event with industry partners from all over the country that are interested in the talent, obviously, that's coming out of this series, but then also some of the technologies that are coming out as well. And robots are everywhere these days, and obviously in the automotive world they're very important, but it comes out in defense, as you were talking about. It's a huge area where there's just a ton of research, and so it has a lot of industry interest right now, and that's where really unique part about this series, right? You're taking these expensive cars and super capable vehicles and giving them to students and letting them be creative and do the things that they don't realize you can't do yet, right? So a lot of people weren't sure, years ago when we were designing these cars, how fast they would ever be able to go, and if they could actually keep up, be close to a human. And now look at it, they're doing the right lines and speeding up. And as you see some of the later cars go, you're going to see some really quick times.
Yeah, and it was on the introduction video as well, highlighting the fact that the cars were able to run in complete darkness at Las Vegas Speedway a couple years ago. That was one of the coolest things that I've seen, that we were able to basically just put lights on the rims of the cars to see where they were, but there was zero assistance, and that's something that could never happen with a carbon-based life form behind the wheel of the car as opposed to a robot.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting event. I was happy to be there as well. I remember it being very cold that night, but it does show a lot about what the vehicle can do. The cars have a suite of cameras on them. There are 6 cameras on them. They have 4 LiDARs and 2 radars, and of course multiple redundant GPS systems on them. So they can really run in about any conditions that you give them. And so, like you said, they can see in the dark. One of the things that is interesting about that is it kind of translates into race driving, the traditional race driving. They also don't really have blind corners. This track has about 180 feet or so of elevation change, which is a lot for a racetrack. And as you go into, say, turn 1, you're blind. You can't see, the human driver can't see what's over the hill, or in the corkscrew at the top of the hill, they can't really see where they're going. Yeah. So you have to use, I guess, landmarks or signs or trees or whatever it is, some other landmarks to figure out where you're going to be. This car knows where it's at. It doesn't really have those blind spots. So it's kind of an interesting difference that these cars, they fill in that gap that normal humans have.
So you're telling me the car is not aiming for the tree at the top of the corkscrew? It's not instinctually knowing that?
No, it doesn't know that. But the teams do. I mean, several of the teams are using their LiDAR systems or their camera systems to try and locate where they're at as a backup to the GPS system. So as we mentioned, as they go under some of the bridges, the GPS systems may drop out. And if that happens, then they want to use these other sensors to know their position a little bit better.
Yeah, well, you talked about the fact that the GPS was having some slight pause as it crossed under the bridge between turns 5 and 6. It's something that happens every single time I drive through the paddock at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. My cell phone decides that it doesn't know what network I belong to anymore. So you imagine that with a piece of technology that costs $800 versus $1 million race car. It's very understandable why they might program the cars to be slightly more tentative the first few times going around, particularly going into a corner like turn 6 that strikes fear into the hearts of race car drivers all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see this one coming down the front straightaway. I'm guessing it's probably going to be their last lap. Really on it. You know, they came out of turn 11, which is the final turn on the speedway. It's actually quite slow and narrow, and then you really accelerate hard down the straightaway, kind of get over a hill into a blind corner. You can see them going downhill in turn 1 or really in turn 2, and then the vehicle, it kind of compresses. You kind of get a little bit of banking as you exit that corner. The track here is flat. It flattens out a little bit now as you go through turns. This is turn 3 that we're seeing them go through now, and then 4, and you start to go uphill a little bit through turn 4, and then 5 is a left-hander where they start up the hill hard, like you were saying, that it's a pretty steep hill that you start going up. You go under that bridge where you lose GPS and into turn 6. Turn 6 is very narrow. The cars have lost their GPS likely, right? Or they may be just getting it back. It's a area where we've seen a lot of issues in practice over the weekend here, and looks like this is where they're heading into right now. It's just a difficult one to see.
Yeah, coming in through turn 6, and then you start to crest the hill. It gets very wide at points. Well, it looks wide, but it's not actually wide because the stuff on either side would do in a tire fairly quickly. It's sharp gravel. You come through, set up for the entrance into the corkscrew, aim for the tree, turn in. It's nice of them to have removed the tires at the apex curbing at the top of the left hand at least, and then the right you want to aim so that you don't run off and wind up in the grate by the time you're exiting turn 9. Want to keep it on the track so you don't wind up in the gravel at the exit of turn 10. We've seen many race cars wind up there over the course of the year. Get on the gas hard before you are once again hard on the brakes into turn 11, trying to get the car pointed towards the left, not too early so that the back snaps out around though, and then you wind up in the gravel at the exit of turn 11. This is a track where there is a lot of consequence for making a mistake. It's not one of the new tracks where you find that there's runoff. This is a proper old-style American racetrack built in the mid-1950s, and it is largely unchanged since the late 90s when they did actually reprofile it. Turn 1 used to go straight and continue going straight instead of coming into the Andretti hairpin, which is turn 2, where the car is now. It used to keep going and run off even more through the mountainous landscape that is around this area.
Yes, and the elevation change, as you mentioned, Shay, especially through the corkscrew, you may know the stats on it, but it feels like it drops off a couple stories
11. And
not a very long. Yeah, it's really interesting on there, and riding around in a passenger car was one thing. It's pretty interesting, but what that's forced the teams to do is really think in 3D, right? They have to have a 3D map of the track and really understand that to help the car decide what is the optimal line, even though that's a really tight corner. You might be able to get away with kind of a two-dimensional mapping at most tracks that are a little bit more flat, but here at Laguna Seca there's no way. You really have to plan all of this in 3 dimensions, which is a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think it's 8.5 stories from the top of the corkscrew to the bottom, and it's 11 total by the time you get back to the pit entrance. That's just off the top of my head though, so I could very much and probably am wrong on that as the car continues round and round. This is lap number 7, timed laps. This should be possibly the cool down lap, maybe the return to the pit in by this point.
I haven't timed it a little over 12 minutes. They're on about their 14th minute, so I think they should be headed down to pit in at this point.
Yeah, that was.
You see the Virginia car. It looks like Virginia, the Cavalier autonomous racing vehicle, just took off in front of me in pit lane, so they're back out on the track.
Excellent, yes, and the AI racing tech car going very slowly through the last complex of corners will be staying to driver's left, or I should say robot's left. Oh, it is still a driver, coming back into the pit lane where it will be greeted by its crew, stopping in the fast lane, shutting off, and then the crew can come over the wall to retrieve it. As you mentioned, Cavalier Autonomous Racing out on the racetrack doing their warm-up lap. Very excited to see what this team can do. They gave us a lot to be excited about back in January, and Rob, they very nearly won the whole thing.
Yeah, they're one of the best teams out here. You know, they've been doing this for a lot of years. Speaking with their Professor Mauterbell this morning, they have a lot of new things that they're trying, and expect to see some pretty good times out of them. They did, interestingly, they were testing earlier this year and pretty much totally destroyed their race car, and so it's taken them a long time to get it kind of built back up and tuned back in, and so you'll see them a little bit slower than where they were, but not necessarily bad. I think they were, trying to be a little bit careful because they were making sure that the car was they were shaking down the car and all the testing. So I wouldn't be too shocked to see them speed up a little bit from even where they were in practice here.
Notice all 4 stickers still on the tires. All the cars are given brand new tires before they go out for their first run, so there is nobody at a disadvantage of maybe not having fresh rubber on the car, as we get a glimpse of the Cavalier Autonomous Racing crew here this weekend. I love the American flag that they've done on the sleeve too. That's just a little bit of extra pride for this group. Really cool to see. And we do, as I mentioned, have international sense on the team. We've had victory in the way of Polymove, as I mentioned earlier on, big hand from Italy in Polymove, and Tomb. We would be remiss if we didn't mention Tomb. They, a team from Germany, have also showed great promise with what they've done, and they've won a couple of these events too, Rob. So we sort of have a bit of a door opening where maybe somebody new can sneak in and claim victory, since they only have to beat one of the previous winning teams.
That's right, yeah. Both Tomb and Unimore are over. They were just running a event over in Monza in Italy, and so they're not here today. But like you said, that there are new teams always coming up, and the big one to look at today would be, of course, Purdue. They've really come on in the last year or so, and are looking really strong in practice. Looks like Virginia's doing a good job, though. This car's a little bit closer to the apex of the corner than what we saw on the previous AR Racing Tech vehicle, and they're doing it looks like they're just kind of doing their steady warm up as they slowly get the tires heated up and try to put in faster times.
I really like the body motion of this car too. It just looks smooth and fluid, and using a bit more of the curbing, getting a little bit less tentative as the laps go along. We will have a tally for you as to where everybody stacks up, although I don't want to get too excited too soon, because as you said, it should continue to just get better and better. We've kind of done that in years past, where maybe we drop a favorite early on, but you never know who's going to be able to come out when it's time for the trophies to be handed out. Everybody tends to hold something a bit back, and indeed, we have a strong opening gambit. Cavalier Autonomous Racing registering 3 miles an hour faster than the fastest speed we saw the last time around. I'm guessing that this is the speed triggered at the start-finish line, because that's when it seems to auto-populate, whereas 106.769 would be a very fast average pace around this track.
Yeah.
So
as soon as we work on that, we'll try to work on getting the official times from race control. It's one of the interesting parts of the series. There's a whole race control group with a bunch of really intelligent people in there that are watching each of the vehicles and can shut them down. And they also send just flags, like, if you're used to watching racing, the green flag, checkered flag, black flag, that kind of thing. They send those all over the air to the vehicles, because the vehicle otherwise really doesn't know what state it should be in. As it's out running, obviously it's in a green flag mode, and but there's a team of engineers that are watching the vehicles, where they're at on the track, watching some of the nominal states of the vehicle to make sure there's not a major issue, and also if they violate some kind of rule, they'll ask them to come into the pits. They'll actually give them the black flag signal, which is basically a pit-in type signal. It's a little bit different than traditional racing. I guess we could, get out there and wave flags, and the cars could actually read the flag. But in this case, from a safety point of view, it's best just to beam beam the flag directly to the vehicle.
Well, and it also makes sense. I mean, the corner workers this weekend, they're going to be out there long enough, long, hard days. We don't want to make their lives any more difficult. They can sit back and enjoy watching this spectacle, as you and I and a couple thousand other people at the track are doing as well. And by the way, thank you to all of our corner workers for this weekend. I know that you and I are on the PA system right now, Rob, and while we've got an opportunity, we can't go racing without you, ladies and gentlemen, including this, because if there wasn't somebody to send the virtual signal to the cars, we wouldn't be able to have a safe condition in which to send them out onto the track. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we're putting on a good show for you. The Cavalier Autonomous Racing team definitely is putting on quite a show. 2 very consistent laps, so I'm wondering if maybe it was 2 I don't even want to call them warm-ups, 2 opening gambits that were very similar programs from the team trying to find a comfortable rhythm, and it really looks like their car is happy around this racetrack.
Yeah, absolutely. They're hitting all the right lines. You know, as you said, kind of cutting off that apex, getting close to the rumble strips as they go on up the hill here. I really don't see any issues. When they went by on the front straightaway, they sounded strong, obviously shifting through the gears as expected, and I really do, you know, quite impressed with what they're doing here. And again, this is a big challenge, you know, as they go back up the hill, where you don't really know what's going to happen. If we're going to see those corner workers, it's probably going to be down in this corner. And it's actually what's interesting. I was up there the other day. You can see where the cars bottom out at the center of the apex as well. These cars are set up a little bit higher ride height, so I'm not sure that it was from these ones, but you can bottom out in there as the banking comes up. And they align themselves perfectly. It looks like for the corkscrew as they come down the hill there, and then back down. And this next corner that they're coming up to is actually, they slow down actually a decent amount here, and sometimes you may hear the audio of the vehicles, you hear kind of a whistle sound. That's actually them backing back out. That's the turbo and the engine making that sound. And then they come through this corner number, I suppose that would be
10.
10 there, yeah. There's some banking that comes back, and you can actually get on the throttle pretty hard there. And some of the teams were a little bit hesitant to do that, and then really heavy braking down into turn 11 here. It's a very tight corner, and actually just before that is where you would go into the pit area. And what we heard from some of the teams this weekend is they're turning into the pits. They're at full lock on the steering, meaning that you know, you can't really steer in any harder than that while they're just really strong.
You know, and it's something that most people would laugh or scoff at when you talk about the dangers of coming into the pit lane at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, but it's true. And a lot of the times you'll find once a race weekend, you get enough series running around, somebody is not going to turn the steering wheel enough. And I know that sounds stupid, but trust me on this, it happens all the time. They're not able to turn the wheel enough, they're not able to make the corner, and they either run into the tires on the outside of the wall, or they wind up parked there waiting, going, help me, because they don't know where reverse is. So that could be something that we see in this series, although I believe that these cars with the GPS sensors, they know what to do a lot better than some humans might not know what to do.
Most of the time, Shay, but not always. Yeah, it is interesting. The teams really, their approach is just go as slow as you can through there. There's, you know, you're not racing into the pits, you know, in a series where you're having to make active pit stops. You know, that time to get around that corner is very important. But here it's, you know, sort of a neutral pit. You're just kind of coming into, you know, from a safe point of view, so you really don't have that pressure to take that corner really fast. But standing down there, I can definitely see how that's a major issue on race day. You know, we have to get into the pits in and out very quickly.
Is this the kind of thing, Rob, where when you're encouraging people, you're mentoring them, you're trying to help them figure out how to apply the racecraft aspect to the computer technology, do you send them videos of pole laps or of perfectly done or almost perfectly done laps of drivers in professional situations at the track to try and give them an idea of where to program the cars to want to be around the racing lines?
Absolutely. You know, I spoke to a lot of the teams about this exact aspect. They spend a lot of time, you obviously before the event, trying to watch any in-car cam you can, for these tracks. And like, for example, down in here, I was doing it the other night, right? So, sitting in bed watching them, where do they apex here? You kind of do like a double apex sort of down in this turn, and watching the peak cars. But you can't do, these cars are different though than some of the other ones, and they have a different level of downforce. Like here, they run sort of the Speedway wing package. It doesn't have a ton of downforce, so you have to be a little bit careful. With comparing exactly to what you've seen in other vehicles. And so the teams then are relying on a lot of data. They also have really complex simulations of these vehicles, and where they can be within maybe a 10th second of the actual time that they're predicting. Speaking with the Polymove team recently on that, their simulations are amazing, right? So really before they even get to the track, they have data on the track. They're running a bunch of simulations. They kind of know, they have really good tire models from all the other runs they've done at all the other tracks. And so they can start to use that to kind of pre-program what their lines should look like, really through simulation. And of course, then you can't ignore reality, right? If there's an IndyCar team that's been here and run thousands and thousands of miles, it's pretty clear they're going to know the right line, or really close to it, right? And so you have to kind of watch that and compare against it. But you're also having to weigh the risk here, right? You don't really want to crash these cars. Obviously, you never want to crash a car, but you're really trying to learn, and so it's a big problem. If you crash, you get way behind on learning, and so you will reduce the risk that you would take. So you will see them run a less aggressive line, and many times, because you want to, you're planning for things to go wrong, essentially, right? You have, if GPS drops out or a sensor fails or whatever is going to happen, you need to make sure that you have a way out of that situation.
It is interesting to think that we've never been in a position as friendly to the teams as we are right now, in that if something were to go wrong, the spare parts truck is already in the paddock. There's a very good line of being able to not only get the parts to fix the car, but there's tons of mechanics walking around who know these cars inside and out. And it's very dangerous to think almost that you could just fix the car or throw a setup from a known Indy NXT team. Thinking, you mentioned Andretti, there's Ganassi too, they're running. There's all of these powerhouse teams that have teams in a very similar car, but as you said, they're run very differently. The ride heights are differently. The weight balance, I'm sure, is completely different, because in the driver cockpit, instead of having some skinny kid that you want who weighs 110 pounds soaking wet, you've got immovable weights as far as the computers, the LiDAR, all that has to factor in too.
Yeah, these cars are a little bit heavier than the Indy NXT cars that you'll see. One, because the engine is a little bit heavier. This is based off a production vehicle engine. It's pretty heavily modified, whereas theirs is a fully custom engine for their series. We kind of intentionally did that one to reduce costs, but it also helped move weight back on the vehicle, which makes it a little bit safer. It naturally tends to understeer a little bit, which is a little bit safer situation than oversteer, especially for autonomous vehicles. We weren't sure early on in the design phase of these vehicles how they would handle those situations, so that was one of the changes. But all the electronics that are in the tub, I would call it, or in the cockpit where the human would normally sit, they end up weighing just about as much as a human driver would in there. So, but the engine and kind of some of the other electronics that are on the vehicle and some of the backup systems do increase the weight above what you might see. Now, this weekend, I believe the Indy NXT cars will likely be in their high downforce workhorse package. And this series runs these Speedway wings. It's just a different wing setup essentially on the vehicle, so there's a little less downforce here as well. So I'm not sure how much you could really share across teams, across different series, but they aren't too different. And as you said, Dallara does a great job of supplying parts. They're the best in the world at this, being at these races and supplying the parts, and certainly used a lot of them up on Monday as we were running testing, of course. Had a few issues out on the track, but it's all pretty normal as you're learning. So.
Yeah, it's something that we've seen across many different examples of the Indy Autonomous Challenge in the past, but that's part of it. And if the cars weren't having issues where the carbon bits wound up off the race car, you wouldn't be learning as much. So as crazy as it sounds, it's a very important part of this whole learning and development process is finding out what not to do. And a very famous race car driver actually said that. You go into each corner so fast that you spin off and then you back it down slightly. That's
right.
That's progress.
And the big challenge is make sure you have the data. So when that car goes off, I mean, usually if you had a driver in it, they can tell you a lot about what probably happened to cause that accident. In this case, is you just relying on all the data on the vehicle. And so that's the big thing. You don't ever want to crash without having the data that tells you, hey, this is probably what happened and this is what we need to change next. Because you definitely don't want to send the car out a second time and potentially have the same problem over again.
No, but in some cases that's more useful, Rob, because drivers lie. Data doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it can. You have to be a little careful. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to handle. Looks like they're slowing down now. They must be coming in on their in lap here. This team, they've done a good job. This is one of the teams they run what they call SLAM, which is simultaneous location and mapping, or localization and mapping, where the car is using multiple sensors to figure out where it's at all the time. It's not just using GPS, and so they're using the LiDARs on the vehicle to help with that, and other sensors there. And so it's really hard to do that. I would say even a few years ago you'd have people that would tell you that wasn't possible to do at these kinds of speeds, but they figured out how to do that. They've teamed up with some companies to help make this happen, and so it's a pretty big achievement on their part, and they look like they put in a pretty successful run there.
Very nice execution of entering the pit lane as well. I was a bit nervous there for a second as it was more of a wide angle, but indeed the number 9 is safely back on the pit lane, and our next car is out on the track. Is this maybe Autonomous Tiger Racing?
This one is...
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I had written in my notes orange, blue, and white for their car, and indeed it is. So yes, Autonomous Tiger Racing. This is Auburn University. Some of the most fun people that you meet up and down the pit lane as far as having the most fun. Doesn't matter what's happening on the racetrack, they're still positive about it. And I've been stunned in the past, thinking back even to Vegas this year. There were a couple of moments where things weren't going great and they were still smiling and laughing and saying, hey, you know what? We're at CES. Life is pretty good. We can't really complain.
Yeah, this team, they've done a great job. One of the smaller teams, but great group of students there. They actually had a couple pretty big, big crashes. They had a couple of off-track incidents on Monday, and so they're really just recovering. They were able to shake down their vehicle just quickly yesterday morning. But I would guess they're going to come out pretty slow these first couple laps, because this is one of the vehicles that had an incident, and they couldn't quite recover all the data that they needed. They spun somehow off of turn 4 and went into the tire barrier, and they didn't know exactly why it happened, but they had some indications. And so they did a lot of overnight work and data crunching and to try to better understand really where the issues are on this team. So it looks like they just, as they cross the start-finish line, they really just got on it pretty hard. So I think they're trying their best here to put in a solid lap.
Oh, I love it. These crew, which started out as the Gav Lab back at Auburn, a very ingenious group of people. I believe it's still 4 main protagonists. Is that correct, Rob? The 4 doctorate students?
Yeah, I think that we're about 4 or 5 students down there, and they have a couple of, Dave Beverly is a professor, and Scott Martin, I believe that they're advisors. And these teams are usually a mix of a lot of PhD students and some master students, and some of them have a good number of undergrads and postdocs and all kinds of things. And so every university is taking a little bit different approach to this. In this case, with Auburn, I believe they're mostly PhD students on the team. And they do a lot of this, I don't know, but spare time is maybe the wrong way to say it, but a lot of them will have other projects that they're working on, for their PhD, and this is part of what they're doing, and it's a great part of it, right? They're learning a ton about navigation of these vehicles as they go around the track. So they're pretty strong as they got up the hill there.
It's a very definition of a passion project. It's something you do
absolutely.
that it sparks a passion in you, and it becomes something that you're very passionate about. And great looking livery on this car as it goes into the corkscrew for the first time in anger. Very tentative on the brakes. Ooh, I love the line that it took on the left-hand side. Still very much off the curbs as you come back around to the right, and then the exit curbs were untroubled that first time through, but that's okay. Not carrying the momentum yet. They've got the entry line down though, so hopefully once the tires come up to temperature, once there's more of a sense that things are okay within the system, it will begin to ramp it up and just continue along with that speed. You mentioned going off at turn 4. Not the first time that's ever happened. Normally it happens with some side-to-side contact from somebody else. Not the case this weekend, but still, it's a fairly common corner for people to wind up beached at. Turn 4, turn 6, turn 5 with side-by-side assistance. Corkscrew if you get it wrong. I mentioned the exit of turn 10, and then of course turn 11 when people just tend to miss their braking zone. And you talked about the fact that the cars are programmed more for a natural understeer as opposed to an oversteer. Oversteer would be something that would help you into the gravel at turn 11. So I'm hoping that everybody is safe to stay on the track.
Yeah, I think in this case it sounded like it was something to do with their navigation system where they there's a lot of noise coming into the vehicle, right? They have a 4-cylinder engine on them that has a natural, what they call second order vibration with the crankshaft, and it's not always, and the cars use accelerometers on board to help determine their position essentially, and so a lot of the issues seem to be around that, where there's maybe a lot of vibration on the vehicle. The vehicle has to figure out which sensors to trust and which ones not to trust in certain times, and so they're sort of filtering all of that information into the vehicle. And speaking with this team, when they got off the track, it had something to do with that, is what it sounded like. There was an issue somewhere in this this filtering technique that they were running, where they thought, the vehicle thought it was basically at another part of the track and probably then just drove itself into the wall. So I don't think it was that. They don't think it was because it broke traction, which is what you generally expect. So.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma, having things rattling loose, particularly for this track. WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca was repaved a few years back. It badly needed the repave to some drivers, like Juan Pablo Montoya, just a few credentials for that guy. But other drivers saying, no, we need to save the bumps and save the character. So right now, this track is very smooth compared to what it used to be, and it's not something that you would associate with being a very bumpy or difficult surface. It's far smoother than, say, the front straight at Indianapolis Motor Speedway when we were running there last September, but it was also wet in September, so it would be different conditions. No chance of precipitation for today, although the temperature is pretty chilly. You mentioned it in the opening. We're not getting out of the 60s today, Rob. It's sweater weather all day, and who would have thought sweater weather in July?
Yeah, it looks like the tow truck is going out onto the track, so they must have lost it off camera here for us a little bit, and I'll have to see if we can pick up where they're at over there.
Well, hopefully it's just a situation of the GPS turning off and they're stranded closer towards the entrance to turn 6. But the good news is there's no crash damage at the corkscrew, and that would be the biggest place for a potential off.
Absolutely.
Camera 2 is back on
Yeah.
D1.
And one of the issues, you mentioned the track being rough. It's one of the pieces. It's generally it seems like the issues that they'll see on the car, it's usually car related. Like the engine is going to shake, right? And these if you're not familiar with these vehicles, the engine is structural. It's just part of the chassis. You see these side pods on both sides of where the driver cockpit is or the electronics are. Those are pretty much empty. They're full of radiators is pretty much what's in there, and a couple other little things. But the car is just kind of this long beam essentially that attaches the front wheels to the rear, and the engine is all part of that. And so that you don't really isolate the engine from the rest of the vehicle like you would on a passenger car, right? It looks like you can see him here. He's stuck
at the top of the corkscrew at just beyond the apex in the gravel. given the trail of the gravel, that's a curious one because maybe he turned in too soon. Forgive me for that. Maybe the robot turned in too soon and wound up actually driving through the gravel, dropping a wheel maybe, and that would have spun the car around. If traction breaks at one area of the car and not the other, that makes one wheel spin faster than the others. That results in rotation, and what we have is a car that is rotated in the incorrect direction. So that could be why the autonomous Tiger racing vehicle is parked the wrong way around, and the tow truck should be able to just do a flat tow. Honestly, if it turned it around back the other way, it would be a very easy, quick trip back into the pit lane. I've seen that done on a big wheel scooter before, so it can be done without power. Unfortunately, this steering wheel would need some human assistance to try and get it back in without that. But Rob, how does the car react when something like this happens? Does it know that it's gotten itself in a pickle and go into shutdown mode?
Well, you never really know, Shay. You do. It does. It will know. And the teams actually have you'll see them carrying a joystick around. If we were in their engineering room, they have a joystick. It looks like a gaming controller, and they have an e-stop on there. And so that's really all that's for. They could. In the past, you could actually steer the vehicle there. They can't do that for this event. But the car will sense, hey, something is wrong. They give it bounds of, how far off the line it can be or how far off the speed target it can be that they have for the vehicle. And if they get too far off of those lines, the car will shut itself down. It looks like here, obviously, they got offline and spun somehow. And I think you noticed earlier in their first lap that they definitely were a little bit offline through the corkscrew area. They took a good line initially, and then and something went wrong. So possibly under braking here, they had a failure. You can see, looks like Andy Keats down there taking the front wing off. These cars are really low to the ground, and so you really you have to take that front wing off. It's a really neat mechanism. Just takes a couple of twists of the wrist essentially with a special tool to pull that wing off, and they'll get this thing up on the rollback pretty quickly. Safety is number one. You mentioned the corner workers earlier, right? That's one of the things that we thought about trying to design these cars is really, what do we, how do we, when there's an issue, because there are always going to be issues, what do we do? And so the race control team, they can essentially shut the engine off remotely to make sure that, the vehicle can't roll. You also, in this case, they're on a decently steep hill there. It's probably a little bit difficult to tell, but it's a pretty steep hill, and so you actually would generally want to lock the brakes if you can, which makes it a little bit harder to load the vehicle. And so there are ways to get on there and actually kind of override the brakes. So if they have a little bit of trouble, it might be because it locked the brakes so that it wouldn't roll all the way down that hill and hit something.
That's a very good point. It's not as if there's anything right there underneath the car that it would be high centered on. They have managed to get the car elevated at the front. Now we've got some movement in the wheels, and this Dallara chassis is going back onto the rollback. This will be a fairly quick cleanup, and the car will be re-delivered to its rightful home, its rightful owners back in the paddock, which means that we should be good to get back underway here shortly, and the next team will be getting ready a little bit sooner than anticipated. But the good news is it doesn't frazzle anybody's mind. It doesn't have any impact mentally on the competitors because they're just telling the car to fire up, and then the car does everything by itself. The robot knows what to do thanks to the humans who programmed it.
Absolutely. Just getting the lap times here, trying to go through from. And so what will happen here with Auburn, with their off track here, they put out a red flag, obviously, because they had to stop the event. Under the rules here, they actually lose their 2 fastest times, and so I think they only put in one timed lap, I believe is what they got through. And so in this case, that'll essentially disqualify them from going on to the second round, which is okay. I mean, I think they're actually called a pretty good success with all that they've been through this past week to get out and be able to run, at least get one good clean lap in before they ran into an issue. With AI Racing Tech, the first car that we saw go out, it looks like now I had this information, they had a 2-minute and 7-second lap is essentially where they're at. So I'm going to record this one down. So 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 7 seconds and 5/10. And then with the Cavalier, they put in a 1:59, so that's even better. 159.8. And Autonomous Tiger Racing had a 2:11 going, and I think that's going to ultimately end up being disqualified.
So that is 3 out of our 8 teams still to come. We have Cast Racer, IU Luddy, Kaist, Polymove MSU, and the long-anticipated Purdue AI Racing. I'm really curious to see what they're able to do. You mentioned that it seems like they've almost started ramping up their game, and I saw something on social media a bit earlier. They opened a new department, I believe it was, or a new building dedicated to AI at Purdue, and that's where this is now housed, this program. So very much taking the next step up is Purdue, and we'll see if it's reflected in what they're able to do on the racetrack as far as their results are concerned.
Yeah, they've really put in a strong effort. The university, I think their dean is here today, actually, so say hello to him. They did a good job of got a lot of university backing and really taking on, and really as all these schools have done, taking on this kind of new wave of AI and including competitions like this one into their curriculum as much as they can. It's really a great thing for the next generation of students, right? Because you can do a lot of things in a textbook, but in the end you ultimately have to practice it in real life, and this is really where you learn a lot of the details, right? And so they've done a good job here. It looks like the vehicle's coming into the pit area, and it looks pretty unscathed from here, from where I can see it. So I think they're going to be fine to be on and racing another day. Really no issues up there. Probably just something with the guidance algorithm that went wrong, and they had a little bit of a problem. I don't know if they'll be cleaning the dirt off in that corner or not, but just see.
The good news was where he went off, the gravel should be fairly well contained to a portion of the racetrack that cars should not be driving on if they are doing a racing line that anywhere resembles the actual racing line. So I'm just putting that out there. In theory, we should be clear of the gravel even without it being cleaned up. We mentioned the practicality and the real life benefits of working on one of these cars, learning how to develop this technology in something that might seem to other people frivolous or unnecessary. No, this is where people are looking. This is where DARPA gave $1 million grant, because they are paying attention to the fact that the minds of tomorrow are learning how to do that today, right here. It's perfectly demonstrated in the fact that one of the sponsors that joined this event for today was GM. They became one of the official sponsors, and GM has a technology in a lot of their cars now called Super Cruise, which is LiDAR based, and it basically, a car will drive itself on a certain number of roads that they have pre-mapped in traffic with human drivers. It reacts. You are still behind the wheel, and you need to be watching the road in front of you. There's a little green bar that lights up on the top of the steering wheel. Yeah, I have access to one of those cars. And it is the most unnerving thing when you start, not because you don't trust the car, but because you don't trust everyone else around you. If every car was relying on that, such as these race cars are doing here on this racetrack right now, then it's a completely different conversation. And that's what major manufacturers such as GM are aiming for in the not so distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing, if you stand back and look at it, we still lose way too many lives on the roads, right? We lose, I think, around 37,000 people a year in the U.S. on the roads, which is just awful, right? And so safety is really at the core of all this. And a lot of those accidents are human error that caused it. And so what series like this are trying to do are really just obviously improve that autonomous technology. This one, really focus on what we call edge cases, or things that don't happen very often, or really high speed situations that you're seeing here a lot, or in the Indy Autonomous Challenge, the tires are always kind of sliding a little bit, right? And as you're going through a lot of the corners, and so these put you in situations that you don't see, you and I wouldn't see very often in a passenger car. But when you do, you'd like to have these driverless algorithms potentially take over for you and get you back out of that situation safely. And so this is really the base foundation of why the Indy Autonomous Challenge exists. Obviously, there's a lot of talent development along with that. And if you look around the country, you'll see autonomous rideshare vehicles now that are fully autonomous without drivers in the seats. I rode in one a couple weeks ago. It was amazing. It was really impressive. But the speeds there still aren't super high. And so as you get onto the expressway where Americans put a lot of their miles in, I don't know that I would want to be in that vehicle then, right?
Yeah.
So it was an amazing experience otherwise, but in series like this are really what helps push the algorithms further and further, as the speeds come up.
Well, that is something that the Super Cruise offers. It's not going below the speed limit. It is traveling with traffic, and so that's something that's even more fascinating. Is the computer is having to read what the other cars around it are doing as far as behaviors are concerned, changing lanes, passing cars, but it's also being aware of being at a safe speed based on what all the other cars are doing. So it's a very smart technology, and you talk about adapting and learning. These race cars are learning what's happening on the track and what the conditions are like, what the tires are doing, how to develop the line, maybe where the track is getting better, where it's more slippery, on and on. That's what we are now seeing in practical everyday life. And you talked about getting a ride in a car share that was autonomous. You go through the Detroit airport now, and there are autonomous wheelchairs that are transporting people back and forth through the entire A concourse. They're going on a set path, but they are picking people up at gates and taking them to their next gates. It's genius, the pure definition of genius, as now out on the racetrack is IU Luddy out of Indiana University. We know that there will be a lot of people in the paddock happy to see these young men and women and what they're able to do.
Yeah, they had a little incident on Monday. Wasn't too bad. There's some front suspension damage, and we were able to get the car back on the track. So I feel like they're probably starting out a little bit conservative here. They've done a great job of coming online, this team, over the last couple of years, and really, becoming one of the contenders overall. Maybe a little bit wide there going in, but they're looking pretty good so far. They came by at a pretty decent speed.
The Andretti hairpin is very difficult to learn, and especially with the double apex, not many people can figure that out the first time around, let alone computers. So it is definitely a voyage of discovery, but thankfully this machine is able to get back up to speed, and I'm seeing a lot of accelerating and decelerating between the corners, much more than we've seen from the competitors at the early gambits of their runs.
Yeah, they may be a little bit uncertain about how much grip they're going to have in the corners. So as the vehicle is going, they're going to learn this, and as they come back down the front straightaway, they will be able to actually beam information back to the vehicle and say, "Hey, speed up," or run a slightly different line. Some of the teams will have pre-programmed in certain different lines based on what they're seeing on the track. There's a whole, I could say, game to this competition where you're taking the data that's coming in off the car and trying to make those decisions in about a minute or so, right? You have to say, okay, I went through a few corners, I need to make a decision quickly, which is part of racing, right? They say, I think you may know better than I do, but it's, you have to make a 2-minute decision in 10 seconds, or it's kind of what ends up having to happen. And so the teams are having to do this as well as they watch the data come off the vehicle, but you're always weighing the risk, right? Okay, if I make this change, is it going to work? Am I going to end up off track, and out of the competition, that sort of thing. So it's a difficult challenge. It's nerve-wracking for the students involved, but it's part of being in the real world, and so it's great to see them getting to do this.
That's exactly it. If I carry slightly more speed through turn 5, that means I'm going to be faster by the time I get to the braking point of turn 6, which means I need to brake harder. So yes, it's exactly that lesson of development. And you mentioned they're trying to send these signals to the cars, but the students are having to actively code. It's not as if they're just able to say to the car, "Hey, turn left 10 feet sooner." Nope, they have to speak a completely different language to make it happen.
Yeah, we're not there yet. Oh, looks like locking up the brakes there into the corner. Yep, another lockup. Looks like they're going to stop. So there's a good example of where the vehicle got off track. The vehicle was not happy with its location difference from where it was supposed to be, and it put itself into an emergency stop. So they'll be out of the competition, unfortunately. But they were looking pretty good there. You can see that in the lap before, they were a little bit off of maybe what you'd want the line to be. It looks like it got a little bit worse as they sped up, but that's just part of the competition as they go through.
I really like to see the daring nature and the boldness of this team, though, not being as hesitant and being more eager to sort of get that pace out of the car in between, as you mentioned, in between the corners, because that's the unknown. It's really easy to put your foot flat on the floor when you're going in a straight line, but when you have to slow down and turn, that's when it gets a little bit more difficult, and the computer was able to recognize that as well. I'm sure we'll be scrambling our tow vehicle to go and retrieve this car as well, and then we should be able to resume the competition. So as it is right now, Cavalier Autonomous Racing, the University of Virginia, is leading the way with the only sub 2-minute lap time. Is IU Luddy able to get the car pointed in the right direction and moving again. Now I wonder if they can tell the car to come back to the pit lane, and then we'll be able to get things going again even quicker.
Yeah, I think so. They're likely just coming back into the pits. They would have flat spotted the tires. I'm not sure if they'll be allowed to keep going here, but it's possible they could keep going. There is some language in the rules about being able to recover the vehicle, but I think in this case they'll likely receive a black flag and have to come in and pit. Or they'll tell it to, hey, don't do that next time. Slow down, right?
Yeah.
It's hopefully the thing, but this is again where is it worth the risk? They can look at the data from the first lap that they have to see how close they were to the other times of the other vehicles to see if they have a chance of making it to the final round, and maybe if they don't, then you'll see them likely just pull in.
We'll have to keep an eye on the car and where it goes when it gets around the back side of the track. So in about another 60 seconds from right now, just taking a very conservative line around the track at a very safe pace. Not as if they're working themselves into another fast lap there, Rob. So I think we are correct in the assumption that this one will not be able to participate further, which means that we still have 4 teams left to come. Kaist, Racer, I would imagine would be next. California Institute of Technology, just based on what we've seen through the practice days.
Yeah, I believe they'll be firing off Kaist next, so they're still sitting on pit lane right now. But I think they're probably waiting to make sure that this IU Luddy car comes back and makes it back safely, which it looks like they're doing. Made it through the corkscrew there, no problem. So they're starting to head down the hill here. So I think they'll get back in. They likely flat spotted the tires when you saw the tire smoke there on screen.
Oh yeah.
Which isn't really good, right? Because that really lowers the traction. It puts vibrations into the vehicle, which makes everything a little bit more difficult. I would think that you wouldn't want to keep running with that, but you might be able to, right? So it just depends on how severe it was. It maybe wasn't that bad. See if they come around. They're just staying back on the track. Yeah, so they're letting them keep going here. I'll see how they do. As they come through the corner, they look okay.
I really like the line that the vehicle took through the corkscrew. It was slow, purposefully so, but it was a very nice apex of the top one at the very least. And now we're back up to speed, so let's see if maybe a lap or two to try and get rid of a bit of the vibration that the flat spot would have incurred. It was a rather large lockup and a very large plume of white smoke that came out of the tire. But the good news is the car is able to keep going, and hopefully, we talked about vibrations being an issue early on. Hopefully the vibration that would have been created by that flat spot doesn't rear its ugly head in some other form later on in the run.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see them going into turn 2 again. They kind of took an odd swerve into the turn there, so it seems like they're still having a little bit of issue there. But hey, they made it through, and looking good on the other parts of the track so far. And the teams, I spoke to a couple teams about this earlier in the week as well, that they had a little bit of trouble kind of aligning where the vehicle was on the track with the GPS signals, and so that might be part of it. Like where is the ideal line? Is it actually here where I think it is, or is it a few meters away? And so there's a little bit of this struggle all the time to figure out exactly even where the track location is. It sounds a little odd. The track is stationary, but it's not always perfect. If like here's the base track data that we have, and this is actually where the vehicle is. They struggle with this sometimes, and so you can see the car do things like that every now and then. It'll kind of swerve around. It's coming back down the hill here, looking pretty good as they go through, and then they'll come through this banked corner here, and you can usually get on the gas pretty hard before you have to do heavy braking down into turn 11.
Well, you say the track doesn't move, but when you drive in through Boundary Road, you're going through Fort Ord, and there's unexploded ordnances around, and they do some bombing training and such, so maybe the track moves just a couple millimeters every year. Maybe that's just kind of stacking up.
Sure. We'll see how they do as they get down into turn 2 again. They just go through turn 1. This is where they had their issue earlier. Heavy on the brakes. You could hear them back off the throttle in that squeal. You could see that kind of back and forth a little bit that the vehicle did, but it's going to make it through.
It's so funny how it keeps doing that initial turn in to turn 2 and then decides no, too soon, swings back out wide and then takes another shot at the left-hander. The rest of the corner looks very good, and the route around turn 3 is actually fairly clean, giving a lot of cushion toward the exit of turn 4. And gets close to the curbs, but not as close as we could see if the car was on the absolute ragged edge. So I like the speed that we're seeing from this IU Luddy car, even if we're not necessarily seeing all of the speed being taken advantage of. We're definitely seeing them giving it a little bit more gas than most people would after having an issue on the track.
Yeah, for sure. It's another nice thing. Without a human in there, you don't have to worry about this, right? You know, there's the confidence. They have all the confidence they ever want, right? You don't have to worry about regaining confidence. Now the engineers down in the pits are certainly concerned, right, as they're watching this, but you know, the car doesn't know any differently, right? It just says I got to keep following this line. It doesn't have to, you know, get back in a rhythm or anything like that. It can pretty much just get up and keep going, assuming the car is still healthy enough to do so.
Yeah, well, and a very healthy first lap time after that, 107.692. That's kilometers an hour. We've had confirmed from the powers that be, so thank you to the wise voices in my head. But that is the second best that we've seen. The first best was from Cavalier Autonomous Racing, leading the way. They were at 108.16, so we're not that far off. IU Luddy comes back and now they beat that, so I would imagine their lap time is also below the 2-minute mark. So that means that all of a sudden we go from having a car that was stranded at the Andretti hairpin to setting the fastest time that we've seen thus far. Now, unfortunately, with that spin being a bit lengthy, they're not going to get as many laps as the competition, Rob, because they do have that time frame, the set deadline of when they are allowed to try and set their times.
Yeah, that's right. It looks like I would guess they're going to get one more lap here because the clock keeps ticking on them as they were stopped down there in the corner, and their race control can make a decision on whether or not they would take additional time away. But in this case, I don't think they would. They're probably just going to let them go and just give them still the full 12-minute window that they had.
Decent line through turn 5 there as the car backed off quite a bit. I couldn't tell if that was lifting coaster, if it was indeed full brakes, but we did get the turbo wastegate flapping, that little chirping, so we know that the engine is still working hard as he comes up the hill and prepares once again, does this robot, to attempt the corkscrew. This is the most difficult turn on the circuit. The left, very nice line through the curb, goes all the way over to the right-hand side of the track. Hesitant to get back out on the throttle, does not use the rumble strips, but other than that, a very clean line through the corkscrew. Down through turn 9, exit at 9, looks good. Now preparing for the difficult braking of turn 10. Very banked corner. Are you going to get back on the throttle early? He does. It does get back on the throttle early. This could be a very good lap as long as turn 11 is not compromised. Early braking, little bit of white smoke might have been from the center of the car there, as now it accelerates and crosses the line. Do we get an improvement in far as pace is concerned? Yes, we do. 109.171 kilometers per hour. That is our new fastest.
Looking really strong there, doing a good line. Still that same kind of odd back and forth into turn 2, but everywhere else looking outstanding on the line that they're choosing. So this is great to see. It seems like they're pushing a little bit harder as the tires warm up and they have a little bit more confidence in the vehicle. So great recovery by this team. I'm impressed. I didn't think they had a chance when they're stuck on the track, but this is really impressive to see.
And just in case some people are joining us now, whether you're around the circuit at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca or joining us online on our YouTube stream, these are autonomous vehicles. They are driving themselves, and they are computers that were told what to do when they left the pit lane. There is a control to the pit lane still that is basically an emergency off button. There is no human telling these cars where they should be at the time around the circuit. This is technology. This is the future. This is the Indy Autonomous Challenge. Very slow
good
at the
line.
top of the corkscrew there.
Yeah, I think they're coming back into the pits. My guess is their time is out here. They put in 5-time laps, and teams were thinking they would get between 5 and 8 laps is generally what you could see. You know, I think with the spin that they had, this is probably the end. You're gonna have to come in here under the black flag, basically, to come into the pits safely. And kind of interesting that you mentioned it earlier, Shay, that is, they come into the pits, the car will actually just stop somewhere near its pit lane or near its pit spot. Oh, they're staying out on the track. It will come in and it will stop near the pits, and then the team will come out and retrieve it after the car shuts down. So just from a safety point of view, that's something really critical. They want to keep people off pit road and make sure they're safe. Now it's back heavily on the gas, so maybe they just kind of avoided that line and kept going here. So.
109.636 kilometers an hour that time around.
Oh.
So we
better.
improved
Okay.
even more.
Okay.
That is 3 speeds better than anyone else has achieved. So even if they were to have 1 or 2 of the fast laps taken away from them, Rob, because that spin early on, they're still good enough in and of their own right to hold that top spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one, because the red flag didn't come out, I think all of their laps will count. They were able to recover. And the race control is now sending out the Kaist vehicle right behind them, so you expect the IU vehicle to come in to the pits this time around as the Kaist vehicle goes out to warm up.
And Kaist is one of the teams that is possibly the furthest along, or at least they should be, because they started their autonomous driving adventure, I would even call it the journey, back in 2009. They've had a long relationship with Hyundai with redeveloping those cars and trying to make them autonomous. That's where they began, and it makes sense because they are a team from South Korea, but they were 3rd at Las Vegas, not once but twice in Indy Autonomous Challenge events. So they've been there or thereabouts. Now the challenge of having to turn left and right is something new, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how they progress here, because, well, yes, we were able to do it at Monza. That was 11 corners with a lot less severe braking. WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca is, if you'll forgive the pun, a completely different kettle of fish, as we are near Cannery Row in Monterey, California, and really good dinner locations for tonight. And while we're speaking about what's to come today, as we are now halfway through with our teams, Rob, we do have a hard out where we have to be off the track by 3:30 in the afternoon. So what does the remainder of the program look like? Everybody else is going to get their time on the track, yes?
Yes, everybody will get their time on the track in the first round, and then the top 2 teams would then go to a second round and have an additional 12 minutes. But there's kind of an interesting catch there, in that in case we run out of time, essentially, you can only improve your time. So your time from the first round still stays, right? So if you want to go out, you can go out and try to improve your time, but you still have the original time if you have to. So that's what the final round will be. So we'll see how it goes here as the final cars end up on the track. You know, as these faster cars start coming out. What ultimately happens here with the seating, but it's right now about 1:52 local time, so we have enough time, I think, to get the whole event in here so far, assuming we don't have any major issues out on the track.
So effectively, it becomes a game of chicken then, because if you feel like you've already set your best possible lap time, you don't have to go out again.
Yeah, you're right. And so this is I tried to have this conversation with a couple teams earlier today, and they looked at me and smiled a little bit. And they because the question is basically, do you just go out and run 3 laps now and pull in, because then even if you put out the red flag, you still retain those laps. But the other way to look at it is, if you end up in the final round, you need to make sure that you have enough laps in case you bring out that red flag, that you can still win the competition.
It's true, though. If you've set a good lap time, are you then scared to go out and cause a red flag and lose that lap time? It's a very interesting game that we're going to see play out a little bit later on. But as it is right now, car number 4 is on the racetrack, and our Kaist team celebrating the car departing a bit earlier on, but we are very happy to say that this car is out on the circuit. and it is doing a very nice opening lap. The lines are very clean. It's been a good distance away from the curbing, but not too far away, and really like what I'm seeing so far. Now the corkscrew is the real test. Turns in a little bit late, leaves a couple of feet at the apex of the left, but not at the apex of the right. Coming down, gets close to the runoff, but very respectful. This is a good, safe opening lap.
Yeah, really strong. And as you mentioned earlier, Kaist is one of the smaller teams, but they've always been really strong. It's one of the best universities in the world. Great students, great personalities on their team as well. They do a good job. Only a few students can travel over here, obviously, because of the cost of everything, but they've always been one of the more competitive teams out there.
Well, and it also helps that we're in Northern California right now. The San Francisco airport is one of the best as far as internationals are concerned, and trying to get back and forth to Asia is not the most difficult thing out of San Francisco, so I'm sure they were glad to see this location chosen as well. The first lap, 107.004 kilometers an hour. That is a very quick opening lap, considering the Cavalier Autonomous Racing max speed was 108.16, and that was on its 6th lap.
Yeah, looking really strong. This came by me on the front straightaway here. It really looked really good, and I expect this team to kind of come out fast. They've always had really good guidance algorithms on their car. You almost can't tell that you don't have a human in that vehicle, right? As they're out there running around, and then they just slowly will keep ramping up. They do a good job with this team with running their code and simulation, and really having a lot of high confidence that the code is going to work well when it gets out into the vehicle. And assuming you don't have a vehicle problem, you expect them to have a strong showing as they go out and run.
Very smooth exit of turn 6. This lap is going to be quicker, assuming it finds no issues with the corkscrew. That is the big assumption, though, because the corkscrew is the corner that seems to catch everyone out. That's where we had our red flag earlier on. Again, wide off the apex on the left, but using all the road on the right-hand side. So while coming into the corkscrew a bit tentative, still doesn't have the placement quite down. But once it's diving down and heading downhill, it knows where to go. So the car figuring things out very well. This robot is clearly getting comfortable, which is funny to say, trying to personify a robot, but it is. It's figuring out this track with every single mile that it covers. 2.238 miles, 11 turns. Sounds simple on paper, and then you bring someone to WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, and say, go quickly. Not all of them can. Kaist knows how to. 112.868 kilometers an hour. That's the first one into the triple digits as far as the top end is concerned.
Yeah, wonderful lap. You could see really the line they took was really strong. Just very smooth. Ooh. And I expect them to speed up again as they come through, kind of just right down to the rumble strips there. Really, maybe a little bit off the apex there, but looking really good.
It has an issue. There was some kind of issue with the drive line. As it started to accelerate, the car stuttered a few times as if it was having trouble selecting a gear. So I'm wondering if maybe the car is stuck in gear. Maybe it was trying to shift too quickly. We'll see if the car can continue around, make it all the way back. But to me, that looked like a kind of mechanical issue. No fault to the coding. That would be really, really unfortunate, especially if they caused a red flag after setting the fast time. Ugh.
Yeah, the car's come to a stop now. I apologize. I have a little technical difficulty here. My screen froze, but I can see them now. And yeah, they definitely stopped. They did sound okay as they went through, but yeah, these cars have a essentially an automated manual transmission in them, and so if that was the issue, they have an air system actually that shifts through, but the car has to determine when it needs to shift, and maybe there was some issue there mechanically when that happened.
So it's a pneumatic gearbox?
Yeah, and there's it's actually kind of fun when the cars are on pit lane to see. You'll hear the little air compressor turn on and everybody jumps that are new to the series. This air compressor will come out and charge a little air canister so that the vehicle can shift itself. And then there's an engine controller on board that helps control that shift as well and manages the engine throttle essentially when you go through the shifting procedure. And it usually works pretty flawlessly, so hopefully they didn't have a mechanical issue there. But there's a lot of reasons why these cars can stop you know, they're always checking that they have communication through all the electronics on board. So they call it like a heartbeat signal that runs all around to all the different electronics to make sure that they're all happy and they're all communicating. You know, that's a safety thing, and then also to make sure that the vehicle is always communicating with the race control people that can shut it down. And if it's not communicating for some reason, it will automatically shut itself down. And so it could have been any number of reasons, or it could have been something even just in the code that they ran into here. So they haven't seen a tow truck get sent out yet.
Yeah.
So maybe they're trying to recycle the vehicle and get it started back up again, which you can do actually remotely. And so that's probably what they're trying to do here, to give them some time, because as you said, they put in some really fast lap times.
Yeah, and the car is stopped just after the exit of turn 3, so it's stopped between turns 3 and 4. The good news is, if there was need of a tow truck, very easy access off the track, just about 200 feet further down on the left. So that means that we could get back to competition fairly quickly, but want to give the team an opportunity to set the car correct. If it is something that is programmable, if it's something mechanical, then it will need to be retrieved. And I'm really fascinated by this whole mechanical aspect of these cars, Robin. You would know better than most as a professor of automotive engineering and somebody so deeply involved with these programs. You guys are always innovating as to how to make the cars faster, lighter, but also more affordable and more malleable to the students. How do you decide, we're going to do a new gearbox for this year, we're going to go with pneumatic instead of the old-fashioned, we're going to go with different shocks for this year because these springs might be slightly better, we're going to run a stock engine but we're going to upgrade it ourselves? How are these decisions come to, and who is the one who's making them?
Well, it was a whole team of people making decisions like that. The main thing is really the operating costs. If you step back and you look at what they're trying to do, it's very difficult, right? So you kind of expect that there would be a lot of stop and go on the vehicles, right? There'd be a lot of issues, and so we didn't really want to have an engine that you had to heat up to get it started. If you're just going to check some software for 30 seconds to see if it works, you don't want to have to heat this thing up and go through a half an hour heat up procedure and this kind of thing. And so we really just kind of stood back and looked at the race series as a customer and the students and all the teams as customers and tried to understand, okay, what is the best thing to do, right? For this whole thing. Every vehicle is essentially the same, right? They have about the same power, they have the same gearboxes and all of that. And so there really isn't a big push to make the vehicles a lot lighter or necessarily even more powerful, because everybody's really working with the same thing. So it's more interest. We had more interest in making the vehicles consistent across all 10 vehicles that were ultimately built, and then really let the racing series be about the software, right? And that's the main goal here. The teams, over the years, the cars have evolved. They've improved the brakes. They've improved computing on board and some other things as the technologies change and as we learn more. But still, the main goal of the series is software focused, right? And there are multiple sets of software on the vehicle. There's the kind of the autonomy stack, we would call it, which is what the teams are primarily modifying. That's where all the decisions are made on the vehicle about how to shift and all of that. Looks like the car is now fired back up and is rolling away, so that maybe they did some sort of reboot. We'll see if they end up coming into the pits or if they end up getting back onto the back running, but their time clock would have been running during that time. So
it's less about making the cars more relevant as far as a car is concerned, and more making the technology more capable of doing things and improving things based on the cars being in a better window?
Yeah, essentially you want to give because they're all working with the same car, you want to give them something that's pretty robust that they can get out and run with and learn. One of the interesting things when we were designing this car, with our what we call our Deep Orange program at Clemson, is we were trying to figure out, you think about this, the car doesn't know, like a human driver still go out and do a track walk, right? walk the track, and they'll look at every corner, every crack in the road, whatever, bump, this kind of thing. This car can't really do that, and a lot of race cars, they need to travel pretty fast so they stay cool and they don't overheat. And so one of the things we thought about was like, okay, can we do a track walk, have a track walk mode? And so we actually wanted this vehicle to be able to run around pretty much all day long, if it could, at maybe 15 or 20 miles an hour, so that the vehicle could learn the track slowly, right? And then slowly work its way up. Now they're back on the throttle here, looking really strong back in front of me, so I think Kaist is looking really good. So they've recovered from whatever issue they had on the track. So the vehicle is actually set up, with the gearing and everything, and the engine especially, so that it can run these lower speeds, so they can go out and learn. And that was really valuable early on in the competition because, you didn't have any data to go off of, so the only way to get it was to start really slow and slowly work your way up. Start at 10 miles an hour and make laps and learn. Then I'll eventually get up to, today what you'll probably see is around 150 or so max speed on the straightaways. And so it's taken a long time to get there, but we try to design the car around that concept that, hey, as you go, you're going to learn. Now, today, if you were going to design a new one of these and where the teams are at, you could probably make them yet even faster. But as you can see, there's still some room for improvement, right? They can still make gains on their lines and how often they're on, full throttle time and that kind of thing. And so, at this point, there's no reason to maybe develop the car more technically, right, in a way. So, and they still do, right? They're always looking at little things to make the vehicle better. But it's a decision that the race series themselves makes. They've run multiple vehicles on the track in the past, and so you might want to go that direction where you focus maybe more on maybe lower speeds, but yet getting multiple vehicles on the track. Or you can do single car runs like you're seeing today, where you really want to see the higher speeds. And it's a difficult thing to do, and we tried to design a car that could kind of do all of those things at the same time.
Yeah, and it is important to keep hitting on the fact that this is a series and this is a competition that takes place all over the world in different formats, like you mentioned. Single car runs like we've got today. We've had time trials before. We've had the passing competition on ovals as, wow, coming out and with a vengeance, laying down a lap time. That's 120.966 kilometers an hour. So I would say the Kaist is all right, proving that everything is good. Wonder what it was that triggered the car to stop them, because it really did judder and spurt and act as if something had gone wrong and it just couldn't find the right gear. Maybe it shifted down when it should have shifted up, and it saw it before anybody else would have noticed, and so it went into an emergency shutdown. It's one of those things.
My guess is
the software will tell us.
The software probably saw some issue and it did a quick shutdown. It's actually one of the things that they had to do in the past to qualify was show that you could do heavy braking from I think 120 miles an hour and control that. So it's actually a pretty hard thing to do, right, when you're right on the braking limit there. Of course, now as we're here at Laguna Seca, braking is really important, right? And so teams have gotten a lot better at that, and that early practice that they did on a lot of the oval tracks came in handy there. My guess is it was probably something that the vehicle saw that it didn't like, that it shut itself down and wanted to, and I think they power cycled it back through with race control, and they got them off and on going again.
Yeah, and if you think about, well, why would somebody need to prove that they can stop quickly? That seems kind of inane. No, by the way, my stepson just got his learner's permit in Florida. He took the test for it earlier today, but he was doing practices. You need to be able to prove that you can slow down from 10 miles an hour to 0 in approximately 25 feet on a bicycle, to ride a bicycle in the state of Florida. Who knew? That's the kind of things that you never think about, the stopping power and the prowess, the importance. If you have to do it on a bike, there's a very good reason these race cars need to do it on the track as well. As lap number 5, which might just be the last lap for this team, 124.411 kilometers an hour. All right, we're throwing overhand now. This is serious.
Yeah, they're definitely picking up the speed here. Really doing a great job of the line that they have. The car looks very stable. There's really no reason for concern here. So I think they just keep going as long until their time runs out on them. And as you saw earlier, you mentioned the sticker tires. The stickers are long gone on this one, right? They really have been pushing it pretty hard through the corners and doing a great job of following, I think, just our normal race line in this case.
It looks like a very stable platform as well. The lines are pretty darn close to what you would want them to be coming around, not using any of the curbing. Again, we're staying off the curbs because computers don't really like to be shaken around. Most humans don't like it either. But we're erring on the side of caution in this one. And when you're able to do a lap time that we just saw and stay off the curbs, that's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And they did a good job up to turns 5 and 6. Actually, on Monday during practice, they got off track there pretty heavily, and they didn't end up hitting anything, but they collected about 20 pounds of gravel in the process, you know, and as I think you were discussing earlier. And so their car looks a lot better through that section than it did earlier. And one of the things I noticed as I was standing up there is they were downshifting right in the middle of the corner, and you could see the car get really upset when they were doing that, and it seems like maybe they fixed that today. So they're looking just really, really strong here as they go through.
That is something in racing. You want to get your braking and your shifting done in a straight line as far as downshifting is concerned. So that would be something that would mildly upset the car, that it would need time to figure out that, hey, wait a minute, there might be a better way to do this. But again, you watch videos from other drivers, from people in the past. I mean, and it doesn't even have to be relevant. It doesn't have to be this car. It doesn't have to be this era. You could go back to Champ Car days or early IMSA days or Grand Am, you name it, a series that ran here in the past. You could go back to the famous Zanardi pass, and apologies for Brian Hurdick, because I'm sure you're listening in the paddock, but there are so many onboard laps to go back and choose from, and you can piece little bits and moments together to try and create the optimum lap.
Yeah, this is you know, really interesting what you're talking about here. I mean, the vehicle itself, you know, when you have a human driver in there, they can kind of quickly audible on things like, hey, I shouldn't shift here, I should shift right there. It's very difficult to figure that out on a driverless vehicle because there's no human in there telling you, hey, this doesn't feel right, or, you know, so you have to use all the data off the vehicle to try to piece together, hey, did this actually feel correct, right? Or should I have delayed this shift a little bit? You know, where a human can kind of pick up on that right away and make a change. And so it's a difficult challenge for the students to figure out how to write a software that's robust to that kind of situation, right? If you just put in a bunch of rules like always shift when the gears, you know, the engine speed is this and the ground speed is that, then you can get locked in these situations where, hey, I shifted in the middle of a corner when I shouldn't have. And so it's a really interesting aspect of this where you have to process all the data. You should probably sit down with a driver at that in that case and try to figure out, okay, does this make sense, right? Sit down with a professional driver, and if you look at some of the teams in the pit area, they do have you know, people that were professional drivers on their teams. So I know Brandon Dixon is down there, and Gary Passon's down there as well. You know, these people have a lot of knowledge about racing, right, and how to handle a vehicle and what it should be doing, and that does matter in the end, right? And it does help those teams go a little bit faster because they have this kind of innate knowledge about how the vehicle should be handled. Otherwise, you just have this, you know, terabytes of data, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what is actually happening here, and, you know, do I need to make a change to this or that aspect of it? And it's a really difficult problem for the students to tackle.
And if you are a driver around the track right now watching these cars and you want to help out, go introduce yourself. Come on, don't be shy. We're all family here. We all love racing. The fastest lap time is now 127.782 kilometers an hour. Let's see if the blue and white car stays out to do one more lap. It would know if the lap time projected is faster. It is staying out on the racetrack, so let's see if we get a better kilometers per hour speed than we have previously seen. As it crosses the line and triggers, we wait for the auto-populating 128.837 kilometers an hour for a race car driving itself. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this is from the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. This car pre-programmed to go out and do its thing, having to react, the robot just set that lap speed. Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing to see. And I'm thinking with the number of laps that they ran, likely race control gave them extra time. Maybe the issue that they saw or why they stopped was maybe they had an issue with race control. So they gave them a little bit of extra time. One of the big concerns going into this weekend, of course, with the other series here, is there's a lot of other radio traffic, and so nobody was really sure how it was all going to work when everybody showed up, right? Because you can get some radio interference here and there, and you can get some little surprises, right? So I don't know if that's what happened there, but that was one of the concerns early on. And so, and of course, just from purely out of safety, if there's ever an issue where the vehicle isn't communicating, you just shut down, right? And the vehicle knows it needs to shut down, and that's just the safest thing to do for everybody around, the corner workers and everybody. So.
Thankfully, I believe that the IndyCar paddock has yet to begin their setup of their pit lane. That's when they would be firing up their telemetry and overlapping certain radio signals, not intentionally, not saying out of any sort of malfeasance, just it's what happens, especially when you run out of radio frequencies at a racetrack. So I would be optimistic in thinking that it wouldn't be anything too strong as far as the radio signals are concerned, but if maybe some of the Indy Nix teams are setting up, or even some of the other support series, it could be a very real issue that maybe somebody fires up to check pits to car communication and oops, sorry, your race car on the track just happened to stop, my bad.
Worse things could happen, but they plan for these kinds of things and move on. Again, it was just one of these discussions that they had this morning, like, okay, everything's worked perfectly all week, and just want to make sure it still works when everybody else shows up, and I think they've done a good job. The technical team at the IAC just does a great job of keeping the cars running and monitoring all the miles on them, keeping them repaired, and of course the teams are always diagnosing other issues on the vehicles and working together. It's a really interesting series in that the teams really are kind of all in it together. I mean, there's certainly competition between them, but it's not fierce in a way. Like the teams will help each other because they really all want to be successful, right? When it comes to race day, they're definitely, they don't say everything that they're doing and this kind of stuff, and that's great. But overall, the teams will work together because they're all kind of in it together, right? They're students learning, and they want the competition to keep ratcheting up, for all the teams, because it makes all the teams better. And this is a really fun and interesting part of this race series that I really enjoy to watch.
Our Caltech racer team is out on the track now. This is Kaist Racer. They've got a little side duck sitting on the roll hoop of the car before it rolled out, hoping to use some psychological warfare maybe to try and generate some extra advantage out around the track. But we shall wait and see if their lap speeds can keep up to the competition. This car, orange, white, and light blue. It's a really nice livery. We would say it's brotherly love toward the different competitors, but it's really more of like a same school. You've got the varsity team and the JV team, but they're all players of the same level, and they're going out there and scrimmaging because there's, yes, I want to beat you, but also at the same time, I want to see you improve too. That's what this series is made of. All the competitors want to be the best, but they also know that a rising tide raises all ships. So it's to everyone's advantage if the cars just continue to go faster and get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And this Caltech team is great. They're one of the newer teams, and this is only, I believe, their second event now.
Yeah.
And they've come on and just, and I think part of that is that they get support from the other teams, right? I mean, they had an amazing team down there, PhD students and postdocs and everything on this team. But it's still, you need the support of some of the other teams to get through some of these small issues that you always run into to try to run these complex cars. And so this is a good example of how the series kind of works together. Bring in another group of really talented people, and they can get up to speed and be one of the fastest cars here, and only their second major outing. So it's great to see them as they get going.
Well, and how great is it too to join a series that's been running for 5 complete seasons now, and to be able to say, I'm having this issue, and another team can go, oh yeah, we've dealt with that before, this is what you have to do. It takes away so much of the pain and the struggle and the growth that you have to go through unnecessarily. Well, it is necessary, but that you have to struggle through unnecessarily. And they are not struggling. Caltech Racer 125.251 for lap 1. Wow. All right, we're going to be in the 130s here in a minute, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these teams, these last 3, were really pretty close together in practice, and you couldn't really tell if they were holding back on each other or not as they were going. But it's it's a hard challenge to do here. This team was just, they were right on the heels, I think, of both Purdue and the Polymove MSU team. And so we'll see how they do. I would expect that they'll slowly keep speeding up. You know, the sun's been out now for a while. The track's warming up, and so I would, you know, speaking with this with the team earlier, with Thomas on their team leader, you know, they have the ability to really select multiple race lines and then also just tell the vehicle to speed up or slow down. And so they're watching this as the vehicle is out and running and trying to understand, okay, what do I need to do next, right? And how far do we push in the vehicle? Oh, it looks like they took a interesting line there around the corkscrew and but made it through okay. And so, you know, they'll be watching all the data that's coming off the car and making sure that, hey, you know, it's okay to push. They have you know, slip bank. They have estimations on the vehicle of its orientation and how much tire slip they're getting in each of the corners, and so they can use that information to then say, okay, it's okay to go faster, or we need to maybe run a different line if possible, right? And then on board the vehicle, even if you dictate, hey, I want to run this line, they can't necessarily always run that line, and so the team, there's a onboard model predictive controller, essentially they call it, which then helps guide the vehicle and override really handle any situation to try to get it back to the optimal line that it was trying to run. It's a pretty complex system with a bunch of steps in it. It's really interesting to see these things running as fast as they are with as complex as the software is on board.
Well, just to put it in perspective, the Caltech racing machine went to go right at the top of the corkscrew. The racetrack goes to the left. The car did realize that it was making a mistake and corrected, and just hitting well, not hitting the apex, but very late through the top of the corkscrew, making the left-hand turn. The lap time was still the best kilometer-per-hour speed that we have seen through this entire competition, even with that gaffe. Although when they get to the top of the corkscrew again, I know the team is going to be having a sharp intake of breath, going, please don't do that again. 129.156 is now the benchmark speed. We will get you the times as we continue to go through this competition, but the speed is the easiest thing to sort of put things into a relative context as we wait to see the car come out the bottom of the corkscrew. He's not come around yet, Rob. I think there's been an issue.
Yeah, I think so as well. Looks like, actually, if I can see on some of the telemetry I have access to, they are stuck up there in the corkscrew somewhere. So it's a little hard to get camera coverage on that backside. They have to fly a drone over there.
Yep.
And so this is a difficult track. It's hard to see maybe on the screen, but there's a lot of elevation change, and you really can't see the whole track from any spot that's here. And so it does look like they're stuck back there in the corkscrew somewhere.
And again, 2.238 miles. You think you should be able to see all of it. Nope, you can't. Actually, the best view is probably from the top of the corkscrew, where you miss out a little bit as they come through turn 9, and then you can't see very much the infield. Turn 5, 6, arguably 4, depending on where you're standing, if it's blocking too much of the side of it. But there is no spot on this track where you can see all of the track where a camera operator is right now. And thank you to our camera operators for today, including the drone operators. Thank you, people, for being out there for us and for all the fans back at home and at the racetrack. We are doing the best we can, and we appreciate you guys being a little bit patient with us as the flatbed tow truck is out, and that means that this car will have to be recovered, and also that means that this is a red flag. So Caltech racers' 2 lap times, they were the fastest, but they exist no more.
Yeah, absolutely. They ran a lap time, you can see in here, of a 140.399, which is really good, right? And that was, I guess that was the speed of 129 kph, and looking great. But when you see the flatbed roll out, that means they probably are, well, they're not able to continue for sure, right? So hopefully they didn't get into anything. I think we saw the signs of that coming, though, the lap before, right? You could see it. I guess there's technically a turn 7 as you climb up that hill, and it does veer to the right a little bit. I think that's considered turn 7, and then you hit into the corkscrew in turn 8. It kind of looked like it got a little too aggressive on 7, and then rode around. So usually those kinds of situations don't fix themselves, and so I'm guessing that they probably had the issue back up there, and which you could see coming, right?
Yeah.
But you have to keep pushing because you want to win, right? So you know, and it could be that, you know, one lap, the system thought, hey, this is okay, you know, or it was good enough, I can do this, and maybe the next time through it may have actually fixed itself because it was in a little bit different position. But,
Getting a view from the drone. The car is off to driver's right at the top of the corkscrew, so I think it did the same thing again, Rob, where it tried to make a right-hand turn, and then that was not the direction the track went. Luckily, it looks like it spun itself around and came to a stop short of the wall, so hopefully this should be a pretty quick extraction for the tow truck. And while the tow truck is out there, we're going to take this opportunity to tell you just a little bit more, first about this track, and then about this series.
Well, welcome back to the Festival of Speed. We're ready for some more action on the hills, so let's join our commentators, Alice Powell, James Hedden and Bruce Jones.
Well, I can't offer you a driver, but I can offer you an autonomous racer, a car built in the States. And let's just say that again, James. Have they done this on bikes yet? A bike with no rider?
They haven't.
Single-seaters with no drivers?
No, they haven't. I don't know if I look forward to that day or not.
So, look, listen, we've watched this car over the course of 4 days here at the Festival of Speed. No driver. It's the IAC AV24. It made its debut in Future Lab last year. It's feeling its way up the hill. And what we've noticed, James, this goes uphill. It's actually a timed run. They're allowing, with each run, it's allowed to go a little closer to the edge and therefore find the faster runs.
The technology in it is so clever, you know, really is. And you can see how much more visibly quicker it's got than its first run, as you say. And yeah, using much more of the track, it's, yeah, I mean, it really is a clever thing.
Okay, this competes in the Autonomous Challenge in the States. It's the only fully autonomous series in the world. And, you know, records are things to be aimed at, and Ben Edwards has just very kindly put a number in front of me. The target they're going for is 66.96 seconds. We're getting close to a minute, so the final few sweeps, is he going to do it? The final corner is just coming up here. It's a long left-hander. It's going to be very, very close indeed. This was done in Robo Racing. I'm sure it's just going to get its nose under the beam in time. Hold on, wait for this to be rounded up at 66.38. Job done. A cup of tea for the driver who isn't on board. You know, you look at that and I still got to compute how that does what it did. But, you know, the great thing is when technical brains set themselves a challenge, and motorsport is something in which you can achieve things. So there was a target time. They have done it. So full marks to them. A full series of those racing. Look it up online. It's called Autonomous Challenge. The Indy Autonomous Challenge, to give it its full name. If I could read better, it would be rather more handy. Take a look at those, and that obviously would imagine those, you know, a whole field of those going around the banking with nobody on board who either would like it or just think, wow, that's amazing. But it's new and it's exciting.
And it's damn clever, isn't it?
Paul, we can hear the car in the background. Tell me a bit more about this project.
So this is the Indy Autonomous Challenge. It is self-driving race cars. We've been operating since 2021. We hold most of the speed records, including a land speed record. But now, today, we were able to break the hill climb record set a few years ago by Robo Race. Very exciting day for us.
It's a big day, as you say, and here it is right behind you on cue.
It is, yeah. So we don't have a typical driver, so I'm CEO of the organization Indy Autonomous Challenge, representing this, but the car was programmed to run by top university students from a team that's representing Polytechnic in Milano and also Michigan State University. We're running on Bridgestone tires, and we're excited to set this record. It was a really tough challenge. Kudos goes to RoboRace for doing this a few years ago. And with rain yesterday, we weren't sure if we were going to get this last run in, but we're just thrilled to be here doing this.
I mean, this isn't your normal racetrack, is it?
This is absolutely not. And if you see our car, it's really set up to run on ovals. So we're running in September 6th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a big, giant oval. So we're running slick tires. It's an oval setup. So there was a lot of risk associated with making this attempt, but we felt it was worth it.
What sort of speed would it get to on the Indy circuit?
So we've had a top speed, land speed record of 192.2 miles per hour. On an oval track, we've been above 180 miles per hour.
You mustn't get bored looking at people's faces when they see a car going around the track without a driver.
Yeah, the first question they ask is it remote control? They think somebody's in the background actually like pulling the handles and telling it what to do like a giant RC car. That is not the case. This is an AI driver that is totally in charge of the car operating. You can see here the PhD students that code this are going to be thrilled today.
And in particular around, well, up the Goodwood Hill, you've got light to dark through the trees of Flint Wall. I mean, what were the particular challenges you came up against?
Just a couple. First of all, GPS is in some cases non-existent, so it's very hard to localize the car and know where it is. We have to use LiDAR sensors to do that, which is a very challenging task. The other thing is connectivity is intermittent, so honestly, once that car left, we had absolutely really no serious connection with it. We get data intermittently, so it's a pretty scary task. You have to trust the software, and this team from Polytechnic in Milano and Michigan State University are really one of the best in the world at coding this kind of self-driving technology. So kudos goes to them. Thanks to our partners at Bridgestone for making this possible.
Well, you made it, and you've got the record, so congratulations, and we've enjoyed watching it going up the hill.
We'll try to come back and set another one.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Autonomous vehicles at the Festival of Speed at Goodwood. One of those things that just doesn't get much cooler than that. Old meets new, as Goodwood is sort of peak history for some of our old cars. And the Goodwood Hill Climb, one of the events where they still encourage you to dress up in period costume. To think that there are now vehicles that drive themselves up the hill. Oh, it's so much fun. As we are here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca, for the Indy Autonomous Challenge. Many thanks to Paul Mitchell, the president of this series, for giving us a bit of insight and telling us a little bit about the hill climb. And many thanks to the teams for giving us an onboard view of what it's like to go down the corkscrew from a little bit earlier in the week. All right, now we've got two. As the fastest laps were taken away from the California Caltech, easy for me to say, the Caltech car for causing the red flag. I hear you snickering over there, Rob Pruka, my friend, and my co-commentator for this event. Who is out on the track? I think they sent Purdue first, did they not?
Yes, Purdue is out there and just getting back onto the front straightaway. This is one of the really fast teams in practice. And everybody was questioning, are they really showing everything or not? Because they really had a lot, and a lot of speed out there in practice. And I think this is also one of the teams that in the last couple of years has really just launched to the top of the series. And so they've done a great job of organizing their team and putting all the right resources behind it, and obviously have an outstanding engineering program there at Purdue. So it's good to see, right? And it's good to see kind of new talent rise up to the top here.
Speaking of new talent, all these young men and women watching their car on track right now, holding their breath to see what kind of speed we're going to get for this opening lap. Will it be good enough to match the speed that we just had laid down that no longer exists, I might say. That gauntlet was thrown, but it did not stick because of the red flag. So if Purdue can do a lap that is somewhere around 125 kilometers an hour for the first lap, we will be on track to see or potentially match the fastest that we've seen so far today. Now, it's a bit tricky because we've seen it, but we've had to obliterate that memory from our minds, if you will, because the time disappeared. It no longer exists in the annals of time as penalty for causing that red flag, but we know it can happen, so it's even more enticing. Can we get to those kinds of speeds again? And if not from Purdue, could we see it from Polymove, the team that we just saw go up the hill climb? So we've got two very enticing teams, two very capable teams. Will the speeds reflect the possibility? Coming through turn 11, now we are getting the hands open. If they were hands, these are robots, let's not forget. And the steering wheel back open to where it should be, crossing the start-finish line for the first time of asking. 1:15.740, so a much more temperate opening lap for Purdue AI Racing. Now, if the last run hadn't happened, I would have been wowing and perhaps dancing on the chair a bit more, Rob, but I'm keeping things a bit more in check because I know that there's more speed to come.
Yeah, absolutely. They're certainly their warm-up laps here where they just slowly keep warming up, keep watching the car. Is it understeering? Is it oversteering in certain corners? Telling it to speed up or slow down or possibly even change the lines as it's going. So, I expect them to be a contender here. It's too bad that the Caltech racer team was disqualified. They definitely looked amazing out there, but we'll see if Purdue can beat Kaist. They had a great opening lap there, so we'll see. They're still about I don't know, it's at about 13 or so kilometers per hour off the pace that Kaist set initially. So, and I expect them to probably be able to complete about 6, maybe 7 laps by the time the 12 minutes is up.
Diving down through the corkscrew, coming through turn 9. We expect to see the car. There it is. Beautiful line through turn 9. Staying still about a car's width off the curb. Coming into turn 10 was a very shallow entry into the apex. So again, being a bit conservative, but now coming through turn 11, the car looks very stable. It's not stepping out, and we are still 8 cars width from the edge of the racetrack, so not using up all the space. But again, we don't want to use up all the space because when we run out over the curves, it rumbles things around, it shakes things up, and technology does not like to be vibrated, so we are keeping it very nice and stable and smooth. 124.543 kilometers an hour. That is the second best speed that we have seen so far that sticks. Now, there's a little provisional star asterisk next to that because the speed won't stick until we get through the entirety of this session, and we do not have a red flag because if a red flag were to come out, the 2 fastest speeds times are eliminated. So we will have a better idea for who is the best of the best once the entire competition is over, but for right now, it is Kaist with that 128.837. That was better than the Cavalier Autonomous Racing. They currently sit in second, but again, Purdue and Polymove to come. It's going to be a very tight decision as to who actually makes it into that top 2.
Yeah, for sure. And Purdue AI Racing is looking great here in the warm-up laps. Don't really see any major concerns yet. Like you're saying, they're a little bit off from maybe the optimal race line in a few corners. But we'll see as the vehicle starts to speed up if it gets closer and closer to that or not. But so far, so good. There really no observable issues as we're watching it make wonderful laps around the track.
The exit from turn 9 was almost identical from the human eye to the lap before, but the entrance to turn 10 was much wider, so carrying more speed through that banked corner. Let's see what speed we get for lap number 3 and the average in kilometers an hour if it was a sizable increase. waiting for the telemetry to catch back up, as going through Andretti was actually a very clean double apex. I really like the look of this car. Moved out towards the entrance of turn 3 to give itself a wider exit. Was a nice line for turn 3 and a nice line for turn 4. Still a couple of feet off of the apex, but again, we've got time to spare. This is only lap number 4, and we're expecting them to be able to get 7 laps for Purdue. So we wait to see what the times are, but this looks like an even better lap than the lap that preceded it.
Yeah, looking really strong as they go up the hill, right under that bridge where you just never really know what's going to happen, right? And this team was pretty quiet about how they managed that situation, right? Every team talked a little bit about it, but I think this team has done a good job of fusing a bunch of their sensors together so that they can really handle that type of situation when they get into it. And they are just now approaching getting through coming back down the hill here, it looks like, yep. And looking really strong as they come through that bank corner of turn number 10 down to 11.
You're not at all insinuating anything, Rob, about the fact that a team associated with the military would be keeping their mouths slightly shut about secrets learned from whatever they can find as Purdue AI Racing crosses the line yet again. I really like what we are seeing out of this robot. Good decision making, very smooth. There's no jerking. There's no second guessing the lines. This looks proper.
Absolutely, yeah. This team is just doing a wonderful job. The car is very smooth. It's very difficult to do this, by the way. You know, to have the steering be very smooth through these situations, and you know, to have it just look like it's just running as you'd expect, right? It's very hard to do this. It's taken many miles of development to get here for Purdue and for all the other teams. It's really impressive to see, and really enjoying it here as they watch them fly around this course.
Yeah, every single driver in the IndyCar series wishes that they could be as consistent and as smooth as these cars are capable of being. It's all about getting the coding right and getting everything to fall into place. But you look at what these cars are able to do after just a few days, weeks, months of coding versus what drivers take years to develop over their careers as far as consistency is concerned. And it's kind of one of those things that makes you laugh a little bit and going, well, I mean, if he can do it, right? But then you remember,
sure,
it's a computer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's still, you know, they're not humans yet, right? They're still not quite to that level, but they're getting a lot closer. And it's interesting, you know, even just you know, like the feedback we talked about a little bit earlier, like the feedback that the driver would normally get through the steering wheel or through their seat. You can't easily get that out. It looks like the car is now slowing down as it comes down the hill. So I'm wondering if they're actually not just shutting down here and coming into the pits because they put in I think 3 fast laps, right? Yeah, so they may be enough to get them into the final round at this point, and they maybe just come in because why risk the car if you don't need to? So this might be a really smart move on their part. So.
Boy, very impressive tactics and decision making, if that is indeed what is happening, because you do want to lay down the gauntlet and then you don't want to jeopardize what you were able to accomplish. So if they feel that their lap times are good enough to get them into that final and perhaps even good enough to win the whole competition, that might be it for Purdue AI Racing. And I am very impressed with the poise and maturity that we have seen from this still relatively young team.
Yeah, they did a great job there. It's also interesting that you maybe don't show your hand in case this Polymove MSU car that's rolling out of the track now and also ends up in the final, right? So you don't really want to show what you can do because, of course, Polymove MSU earned the chance to go last because they were the fastest in practice, which is an advantage, right? You get to see, but you don't have to show them everything. And these teams definitely know how to play that game with each other, which is great to see. It's all part of the competition.
That's a very, very good point, Rob, especially when you're going up against the Giants. There have been 7 different competitions for the Indy Autonomous Challenge globally, and 4 of them have gone the way of Polymove. So just putting that into context, they are the Giants, and right now Purdue is trying to be the giant killer, if you will. So Polymove with wins at Las Vegas Motor Speedway 2022-2023, Texas Motor Speedway in 2022, and of course, the only other time we have done a competition on a track that goes left and right, that one being Monza, that was in 2023. So, Polymove know what it takes to win one of these. Are they going to put down their potential fastest lap and then park it too, hoping that maybe it entices Purdue to go out faster, or do they just lay it all out now? I would be more tempted, Rob, to just go as quickly as I could without jeopardizing the car or risking the possibility of losing that fast lap time and then not running again. Because if you do it all at once, you can say, all right, I'm good. I don't need to run in the finale. This is my lap time. Go catch me, because it's on you, i.e. Purdue, to try and set a faster lap time. And you don't run the risk of causing a red flag and losing your 2 fastest laps.
I agree with you, Shay. I've never really known this team to back down. So I expect that they're going to go and run their full 12 minutes here and just put down the fastest laps that they can, because it's you're right. Everything's working on the car. Just have at it and see if you can't set a faster time. There's always some chance that something can go wrong with the car every time you park it, and so I would get out there and run the best they can as they come by us here on the front straightaway. Looking, they're going to put up a good rep here. Definitely one of the better teams. This team's always has a good strategy, right? They really think about not only the technical side of the car, which is always very solid, but also just the competition piece of it. And if there's a window or a gray area in the rule book, they'll try to use it, right? And if they can, right? If it's to their advantage, they're very intelligent in that way, and they have, amazing students, amazing faculty that are helping them run this, and they just really have the kind of the complete picture always of the event, and been a joy to watch them go over the years, as they've improved. So.
Getting word that it was a 131.7 kilometers an hour for Purdue AI Racing. So let's keep an eye on Polymove MSU and see how quickly they pass that, if they are able to pass that benchmark, and if they continue to improve beyond it. But for Polymove, the stickers were still on the 4 Bridgestone tires when he crossed under the start-finish line, but already one of the stickers has disappeared. So very good tire management from this robot, this team, this organization, this cohort, because it is really a combination of several different universities that has really made Polymove into the giant as we know it today. Very smooth lines, using more of the track almost than some of the other cars that we saw early on. And Polymove knows what to do, so we wait to see what the lap time will be as it crosses the start-finish line for the first time in anger. And anger is an appropriate term for it. The car is rumbling away, full throttle, coming out of turn number 11.
Absolutely, Shay. This team is looking great. I think another thing to add to this is that they've been consistent for many years. It's really hard to do that in the university world. As we talked about earlier, the students graduate, they move on to great careers, and then you start with a new, younger team. And this team has had a large enough group that I guess they must mentor each other really well, but they've always kind of maintained that really high level over the years, which is very difficult to do. It's something that's different than you might see in a professional sport where everybody's under contracts and everything else. Here it's just your students, when the time you graduate, you're gone, unfortunately, right? For the teams. But you have to keep training this younger generation, and the teams that figure that out really do the best in the end. It's a very, very difficult thing to do in the academic world, right? To figure out how to keep this thing moving and keep its momentum. And Polymove MSU has done that, and you can see others have as well, right? It's a very difficult aspect of this whole challenge that really doesn't show up on the speed in many ways, but the consistency over the years it's a difficult thing. So I have a lot of respect for these teams that they're able to consistently come out every year and put in fast times.
Yeah, and on one hand you can argue, well, maybe their benefit is that it's so many different universities and different programs together that not all the good people are matriculating in one cycle, if you will. You're able to hold on to certain people for longer because you're getting so many different people at different stages in their career, but that's not the case for everybody. There have been teams that are comprised of many different universities that aren't able to find the same success that we've seen demonstrated by Polymove MSU. So it's even more of a testament to the people behind this program that they are able to stay at such an elite level in these competitions and really really show their mettle time and time again. Lap 2 was 123.775. We expect to see 5 more laps from this crew, and they need to increase the kilometers per hour by approximately 9 to try and get within a window where they will safely be into the finals, because right now, second place, the bubble, is 128.837.
Yep, absolutely. They know what they have to do. This is the benefit of being seated last. You know what you have to do with the vehicle. And so, again, you can communicate a little bit just in the short window from the exit of turn 11 on to the start-finish line. And, you know, in this case, the only thing you can tell it to do is go faster, right? Because you know you're not going to make the final if you don't. And so they'll be, of course, monitoring all the data, running simulations if they can in the background while this car is doing its laps to see if indeed it's going to, you know, if it can go faster. I think we know it can, but we'll see if they can make it there. It's not a given that they're going to be faster than the Kaist car, I guess, which is in second place right now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you might be wondering how track conditions have changed through the course of the running of the whole day. Not much is the answer. It's increased maybe 2 degrees C on the track temperature. Not enough to where it would be any kind of advantage or disadvantage for any of the competitors going out later. And also, in a normal situation, you would think about tire rubber being laid down. Well, when it's one car going out for an average of 5 laps, it's not enough to, again, make a sizable difference. So it's not something that the coders would have to be cognizant of in their programming to try and then supplement that as an effect. For example, we had an event where it rained and the track was drying out, and we had teams that didn't know what to do in that situation. They weren't familiar with the style of racing on a drying track and perhaps taking a wet line. We've seen that happen in the past, but again, it's learning. That's why we do this. It's not going out and making it perfect right off the bat. Polymove is a team that's very, very, very good at adapting, though. So for them to be able to go out last, if there had been a situation where the track was evolving, you would think that they would be best equipped to try and handle that.
Yeah, it's certainly, you're right in that, you know, the other support series, or the other companion series that we're with out here this week haven't been on the track yet, and so there's really probably not a lot of track rubber laid down, and with only one car at a time and so few laps, you're probably not going to see a major change. And of course, this perfect California weather pretty much stays consistent throughout the day. So, you know, it is good that it's pretty fair, really, for all teams. There's not a major advantage for going out in the shade or the wind or whatever, because the weather has been pretty consistent. And this team is speeding up. They look like they're doing a good job here of slowly clipping laps through, but they're still not quite to the level where they're going to surpass Kaist here. We'll have to see what they get as they come to the stripe here.
They're doing it for us, Rob. They're trying to keep us on the edge of our seat, as there's still a sticker on the right rear bridge down 129.043. All right, so tentatively, we are into the finals now for Polymove MSU, but we have not surpassed the speed of Purdue, meaning they may as well stay out, get 3 more laps, try and bump up the speed, and then they become the chasee. They are the one being hunted, and it's on their competitors to go back out and set a faster lap time, and if they can't, well, then Polymove inherits the win. So it really is a situation now where they've already got themselves into the final. Now they're going for the win in this next couple of laps.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they need to, if I were them, I would be wanting to stay out here. The car looks like it just looks perfect out there.
Yeah.
So if they feel like they have the speed, they need to keep going. They're trying to hit a 131.7, I think is what they're trying to hit here. That would put them in the lead, and then I don't know if they would park it or just keep going at that point. You know, if they want to do a second run or if they would just park.
Oh.
You know, they're on the freshest tires they're going to get. I'm not sure if they would get yet a new set of tires for the final. But, you know, if you have them warmed up here and you have the time, it's probably the time to do it. Just let it run.
Exactly. And then if you do get a set of new tires, you then have to warm them up as well. But if you don't get a new set of tires, you're then talking about going out on a set of tires that has been through a heat cycle. All right, these Bridgestones will not have cooled off as much as the Purdue AI Racing Bridgestones would have, so there would be a slight advantage there, but if you weren't able to set a faster lap already, what makes you think you're going to be able to after the close of the lap? It's not not going to make that much of a difference. And the bigger concern, Rob, is jeopardizing the fast lap times that you've set by the chance of maybe causing a red flag.
Just came through at a 1:30.492, so still that puts them solidly into second place at this point, but still not up into first. So it looks like they're going to keep running until they run out of time. In the worst case, they end up just in the final round trying to beat the Purdue car.
Now, would they even have to come back into the pit lane? That's the other interesting question, because if they just got 12 more minutes, I would argue, hey, just let me keep going.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think with the rule book, they would have them come in and pit, check everything over, and then resend the cars. But I do believe that the fastest car will then go last, right? So it's in this case, it would be them for now. But we'll see where they get. They look like they're still on it here, and trying to further improve that time. And of course, the faster you get, the harder it is to make these incremental improvements, because the car is really starting to slip and slide around. Because that's really the point, right? You want to put the car right on the edge as much as you can, and again, it's difficult. The software has to be able to catch the car if it starts to get upset a little bit in a corner. It's a hard thing to do, to write software to be able to do that. These teams, they have this kind of capability on board with their model-based controls.
They call it the ragged edge of adhesion for a reason, as coming through turn 11, Polymove MSU. Can we get an improvement of 130.492? Can we get over 130.7? We match 131.7. Now the question is, who was a faster 100th? We are having to go back to the second decimal place to try and see which of our teams, but Polymove is not content with it being that close. They are still pushing. This organization knows victory. They are not interested in a tie. They want the win all to themselves, and they want to not have to go to a final round if you don't have to. So let's see if maybe they can pull something out of the bag. This will be their final lap, I would expect. This will be the completion of lap number 7, and we wait to see what is possible.
Yeah, I agree. This is likely the final lap, and we'll see if they can put a little bit more time on there. I unfortunately only wrote it down 31.7 for the Purdue team, so I don't have it to the next decimal point, so we'll have to get a ruling on that, which one's in the lead, but it does look like they've maybe slowed down here a little bit.
We are getting a confirmation as to what the lap time was. When that drops in, I will inform you as well. But the time was just reported to us as 131.7. So we'll wait and see what race control has to say. But it could all be null and void if we get a faster speed this time around. No, we're not. Oh, Polymove has waved off this lap. They are slow. They are around the rim of the racetrack, and it looks like it is a rejoin to the pit lane. That's it. We've got a final.
Wow, and couldn't be closer either, right? It was really, really close speeds between these two top teams, and it's too bad for Kaist, right? They put up a great lap there, several great laps, right, to get into this, and so it looks like they're going to end up in third place. Well-deserved third place, right? And of course, Caltech was looking really strong there too until they threw out their red flag there. But wonderful to see these two top teams. I think this is probably what most people expected when we watch practice, but you just never know, right? And you never know which teams are able to hold back and which teams will have a bad day, honestly, when they get out on their track. So,
yep.
So good surprise. I'm sure there'll be a quick turnaround here of the vehicles. I see the teams walking out onto the pit area to go retrieve the Polymove MSU car, and they have to make sure they plug them back into the wall because there's a lot of electronics on board. They use somewhere around 1.5 kilowatts of electricity to run all the stuff on the vehicle, and so they just pretty much keep them plugged into the wall when they're sitting in pit lane so they don't drain the batteries that are on board. It's kind of a interesting thing that you don't have to do with every race car, but you definitely want to do it with these just because of the amount of computing power that's on board.
Well, the top class of cars in both the World Endurance Championship and the IMSA Sports Car Championship, they do use batteries. They are hybrid based. So we are seeing that technology starting to translate more and more into the world of racing beyond autonomous racing. So official now, our scoreboard, Polymove MSU with the fastest time set and the fastest speed, 131.797 kilometers an hour. Better than Purdue AI's racing 131.7? 1.13 kilometers an hour. Kaist comes home in third with a very respectable 128.837. Fourth, IU Luddy, recovering after their stoppage out on the track at a 109.636. Cavalier Autonomous Racing just behind them, 108.16. And then rounding out our field for competitors able to set a time, the ones who opened up the day, AI Racing Tech, 101.673. Given all the issues we had in the test days, Rob, I'm pleased that every single one of the competitors was able to get over 100 kilometers an hour average.
Yeah, they all completed a lap, which is great to see, and it's great for the students, right? It's difficult, and motorsports can be really difficult, right? And it can hurt your confidence every now and then, but at least they all got out there and ran, and got good lap times in. And honestly, you can look at Caltech; they didn't have a time, but they were pretty close to getting in the finals where they were at.
Oh yeah,
or right up there in the top four for sure. And and with the Auburn, the Autonomous Tiger Racing, they had 2 crashes earlier in the week, and so it was just a tough day to try to recover. And they were looking really good, and they just had a small incident. And so, even if you didn't score a time, it doesn't mean you were bad here, because it looked like everybody put up a good showing. And it's been nice to see over the last, I guess, about 5 years now, how the field has kind of closed together on itself. There used to be a much bigger spread between the teams, and now they really are very competitive from team to team. All of them are there, and you really do expect that pretty much anyone could win at about any day.
Yeah, and it makes me more excited for the next one of these competitions, because we've gone from having 2 teams that really, they got it figured out quicker than everyone else, I think it's fair to say. For Polymove and Tomb, they were sort of the ones leading the way right at the beginning of all of this competition. Tomb not here this weekend because they were just running in Monza, and we now have 4 teams that have demonstrated today capability to be within a few cars widths of each other if they were out on track at the same time. That sort of speed being that consistent. So I'm really, really eager to see what sort of growth and potential arc we can stay on with this level, because it's come so far already. We're just continuing to thrive, and I really enjoy seeing all of the students developing the technology at a very similar rate, and the rate is insanely quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them don't sleep a lot, but they certainly can rapidly produce. Change their code. They get to know it as they get more experienced, and can rapidly iterate to better and better solutions. And another aspect of this series that's really interesting is I see the Purdue car starting to roll off pit lane, is that every team has a little bit different funding structure as well. In some cases, the university is funding them heavily. In some cases, it's external sponsorship. In other cases, they don't really have a lot of anything, right? They're just scraping together the funds that they can find, certain professors or whatever. And so there's a different, there's a very different set of structures within the series. And but what's interesting is that they're able to make almost all of them work, right? So, because all the teams end up being pretty close together. And on top of that, the challenge of graduating students and bringing in fresh batches every time, it's a difficult thing to do. And so it's interesting to see that I wouldn't have expected this 5 years ago, that the teams would really kind of close together like they have. And so good job overall. And looks like that Purdue car is rolling up off of pit lane up the hill.
Yep.
And going down toward turn, I guess that's technically turn 2 down there.
Yep. And very important to notice, no stickers on the tires. These are not new tires. So this is the second time of asking for these Bridgestones to go out, get a heat cycle. That is also a different experience for cars, and it's something that the drivers of the cars, i.e. the robots, would need to be cognizant of. The tires are going to come in differently. They're also going to wear differently. So you're going to have different grip levels at different points throughout the run. Whereas your peak in your first lap might have been lap 5. In the second run, it might be lap 4, but it might be shorter and sharper. That is something also that needs to be programmed into the computers to think, hey, All right, last time I went to lap 3 before I asked it for speed. This time I need to go to lap 2. What I also really like about what we're seeing is it's just the Purdue car out on the track, meaning that it will be the same amount of time, roughly, that the Purdue car was in the pit lane having its tires cooled off before we would then potentially see another option from Polymove MSU to go out on the track. In other words, the Purdue car's tires will have cooled off as much as the Polymove tires did.
Yeah, great call, Shay. I agree with you. It looks like it's a very fair setup that's looking ready to happen, and these cars were already very close together. The cars will have some kind of slip angle estimation, and in some cases measurement, right? So the first couple laps out, you expect that the cars will be doing a relatively conservative run to try to measure that grip level that they have, right? And so they have enough sensing on the vehicle that they can determine really what the tires are doing, and then they can slowly, again, as they can communicate to the vehicle, hey, it is okay to speed up, go to the next percentage higher. But I would expect they'll come out in these opening couple laps and they're learning that information, right? Because as you're saying, the tires they're not new, but they're essentially different, right? Because they've gone through this heat cycle, and so the teams do have this information in front of them. The challenge is you have a bunch of data that comes in. You have to really turn that into something useful that you understand, right? So that they can watch, and it's hard to do in this short period of time and it takes to do a lap. Am I understeering or oversteering or this sort of thing? But it looks like Purdue is pretty heavy on the throttle here as it comes down the front straightaway. So they're right on it, starting their 12 minutes.
And now is also when testing would come in more relevant, because you're not going to have strapped on a new set of Bridgestone tires every single time the car came in the pits when you were testing. You might have gone out, run 7 laps, done effectively a full run, and then waited a little while and changed some stuff and then sent the car back out again. So we could be in a situation where both of these teams are going, oh yeah, we did this on Tuesday, and remember this happened in XYZ, and we've already got the coding for what we had to change for that. So I would fully expect teams such as Purdue AI Racing and Polymove MSU to be fully prepared for the situation in front of them, especially Purdue. When they pitted early, they knew what they had up their sleeve, and they just kind of sat there and went, good luck.
Yeah, that's right. These cars also have they have a tire temperature sensor that's integrated into the pressure valve where you normally fill the air in your tires. They do pressure, and they can also scan the temperature of the inside of the tire. So the teams can use that put that into their model so they can see as the tires start warming up. That's all part of it. I guess you'd have this in most, you'd probably see this weekend in some of the other cars that will be running around here. But the algorithm takes that information in right away and is started to then refine the tire model that goes into the controller that the vehicle is running. There is a real-time tire model that's running in there that's predicting how much traction it has, under the loading that's there, and the car also has sensors that help it determine how much load is on each tire, or how much normal force or downforce is on each tire. So then they have a bigger model that says, okay, this is how much traction the vehicle really has.
Completing
great lap.
Lap number 1. It looked really stable. A good opening lap, but again, I would expect this second lap to be much quicker. Not only because the opening lap was out of the way, but we do have to temper ourselves, because we have to remember, if the lap time isn't faster than what we had in its initial run, it doesn't count. It doesn't matter. This car has to go faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're in second place. They're going to try to go faster, and it looks like they're trying as hard as they can. It looks like this thing is really pushing the limit of everything on the vehicle, and I haven't really seen it step out at all. And it looks like it's just following a perfect line of what you'd expect, and no obvious issues as it's going around the track.
Very well planted, very smooth, very stable as the car is climbing up the hill, getting ready to approach the corkscrew. And then we will be seeing it next as it exits turn 9. That tighter left-hander than you expect. You were mentioning the car's braking for it. It is something that, depending on the car, you can either do a breathe of the throttle or you need a stab of the brakes. But the car now comes through. Good line, very far off the exit curbing. So again, we are not at a place where this car is giving it its all yet. We did see the robot get much closer to that exit curbing at the exit of turn 9. So just wait. Just be patient.
Yeah, I could watch it. When I was watching practice, it seemed like everybody struggled with I guess it would be turn 9 down the hill. That one seemed to be one where people were really backing off pretty heavily. It seemed to look like they had similar. I don't know. They're being very conservative in that area. Just that steep downhill, and it seems like there's not really any banking there. It feels kind of very flat when you're on it. So it doesn't surprise me that they were a little bit off there.
I like the line through the first part of turn 2. We're still about 2 feet off the apex from turn to the exit at the second part of the corner, but other than that, the car looks very smooth. It's picking the right ways to get around this track, and turn 5 is always a tricky one. I really like the way that it turns in. It's one fluid movement. There's no second stab, and again, staying well off the curbing at the exit. Now, drivers in professional series will go over the curbing onto the pavement in the runoff, which they did a few years ago for drainage purposes. And then sometimes they'll even get to the gravel too. That's not allowed, but that's what drivers do. The problem with race car drivers, if you give them a little bit of pavement, they're going to use it and more. The good thing about the robots, they do what they're told, and I really like that.
Most of the time, Shane.
Most of the time.
They do what yes. Yeah, and you know, as you were saying, that you want to straighten out the corner as much as you can, right? That's kind of the fastest way through it. It's the easiest on the tires. It doesn't sort of bind up the car, is maybe one way to say it. So yeah, you want to use all the racetrack that you can if you're kind of new to racing, and so you will. You'll go right over those rumble strips and out onto any other paved section that you can to make that corner radius as large as possible, essentially. If they come by on the front straight, looking like they're at full throttle. So if we have the time to come through. But.
Yeah, the approach for turn 2 was nice. Once again, the car is very smooth, picking up the throttle earlier this time. So we are increasing the pace. Now, they would know, Purdue Racing would know, if they need to continue to ramp it up and how much further they need to ramp it up. But the difficult part for Purdue AI Racing is how much faster above Polymove do they need to go to be safe in order to achieve a victory, assuming they can get above that benchmark. Now, it's a very difficult thing because the cards were kept kind of safe, but was Polymove MSU showing everything they had? Was that everything they have? Is there a little more in the tank? We just don't know. The mind games at this point are just fabulous.
I think I had a little lock up there through the corkscrew at the top of the corkscrew with the inside left tire. That will get a little bit light as you turn into that. That's pretty normal to see. So they're kind of right on the limit here of what this team is able to do, at least in that corner. Looking good as they're coming down the hill, though. Again, a little bit off that apex, a couple feet off the apex, but overall still safe and looking very smooth as they come through.
Final turn and crossing the timing line, coming up to start finish. We wait to find out if that was good enough or if we need this one more. I'm guessing by the sound of the engine, we are going for it on this lap as well. Do we have time, Rob, for it to be this one and one more, or is this it?
I think it looks like they've got one more. They're going after it for sure. I do see a little bit of information coming through that they did a time of a 1:33.548. I don't have the speed for it, but that's really good. I think that's the fastest speed we've seen all week, so by a couple seconds. So they're still pushing really hard. This is a really strong run. And I think that's about 5 seconds faster, it looks like, than what the Polymove team did.
Wow.
Earlier. So this is good. This is a really strong one. I'm sure this is the best laps they've put in all week. So if they were saving anything, they're letting it all go right now.
138.615, I'm being told, again, by the ethereal, all-knowing voices in my head. Thank you, voices. That is quite an effort, considering that the time to get them in was a 131.7. So 138 is definitely moving the bar. The question now is, what does Polymove have left, and can Purdue AI Racing move the bar even further? The more exciting, enticing thing is that Polymove has to go back out. I really like this.
Yeah, knowing them, they're definitely not content with second, so they're going to give it a try no matter what happens here, whether they can beat them or not. And that's, you have to appreciate that for them, because they don't need to do this, and these cars are expensive, right? So
yeah,
it's just out of the competition you want to win, and so this is great. It's a great opportunity for the students to put it all out there.
No, I mean, it's just $1 million of race car parts, technology, sweat, blood, tears, you know.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But, what a wonderful, wonderful thing for them to experience, though, as they're going through this and all the nerves that come with that. It's great to see this car. It looks like it's still doing great lines here. So
yeah, it is.
Looks like they have one more lap. And at these speeds, I would guess they probably have, this is probably the final lap at this speed. So.
140.6 the last time around.
Wow.
Continuing to move the goalpost. Purdue AI Racing with their gold, black, and white machine. It's good colors, and it is a very quick robot out there. Now, are we going to stay out and complete this lap? Still looks like the right pedal is suppressed to the floor. Yep, we are completing this one as well. Can we get above 140.6? How far are they trying to move this goalpost? How badly do they want to win a competition to beat Polymove MSU? 4 victories to Polymove in the past. And Purdue right now is got one hand firmly on the trophy. They're trying to raise it, but it's not theirs to raise just quite yet.
And watching them come down the hill the last lap, it looked amazing, right? Really, really strong. Always a little bit amazed that these cars can do this, right? That looks like they may be stopped on the track here at this point, or maybe that's just I'm froze up here. But nope. It's just amazing to see that there's no driver in this thing, and the speeds that they can come through. It's really something. So, yeah, maybe they did shut down. So I don't know if this is considered a red flag or not at this point, but either way, they have put in some really fast times.
That is very, very impressive as the car gets moving once again. 9 kilometers an hour faster than the fastest time they set to get into this final. And the time that they set to get into the final, when they set it, was 3 clicks faster than what anyone else had done. So we are seeing a very big gauntlet being thrown by this team out of Indiana. Again, hometown heroes to a lot of people in the paddock this weekend. This would be a heck of a victory for them if they were able to hold on to it. And, well, not even hold on to it, if they were able to earn it in the manner that they have today.
Yeah, this is, I mean, respectable no matter what happens at this point. They've done a great job. The car looked just perfect out there on track, and it did everything right. It looks like you'll need about a little under 9 kilometers an hour that Polymove's going to have to gain to surpass them. So it's going to be a tough thing to do, because this car looked like it was about on the limit. I've seen it when it was under heavy braking and locking up and everything that it was doing. So this will be a hard one to beat. We'll see what happens.
Now is when you want to be on the pit lane, looking at the faces of the humans. You want to see the joy in Purdue AI Racing, what they've been able to accomplish here this weekend and in the months leading up to this moment where their car was out on track. But you also want to be looking at Polymove MSU. Are they nervous? Do they look like they can do this? Do they look like they've got this in the bag? Are they having poker faces? Do they look like they're about to throw up? This is the kind of emotion that the human face can't hide very well. When you know you've got a car capable of winning, and then you've got the thought of, can it actually do it? Did I write the code correctly? Did I put a 1 where there should have been a 0? Did I cost my team this opportunity? Or did I do everything right? Did we do everything right? Is this going to happen? Will this be the day the Polymove wins for the 5th time for car number 5 on North American soil? It's about to be discovered, and it is all in the hands of the technology. The robot out on track right now is going to determine who wins and loses this competition.
Yeah, and all the hard work that they've done on simulations, all of that is paying off, right? As you saw that with Purdue, there's a lot behind the scenes. If you really do your homework, you're less nervous, right? They're still always nervous because these are expensive and complicated cars, but but there was a lot of simulation that went on behind the scenes so that they had the confidence. So if you make a code change, they test it. And so before it ever gets on the vehicle, they try to test it through all the situations that it could see. And that's really where the confidence comes from, right? To get out there and keep pushing and pushing. And you can't just make a change and not test it, because that's really where issues start to happen. And so these teams having the discipline to do that, it's not always easy, right? It takes extra time to do all that, but having that discipline is what ultimately puts you in this final round. And you can see it here. And so I'm sure they're nervous, but they can be pretty confident too that they've done the best they can, because they really have put together a great program over the years, just like Purdue has here.
Yeah. Well, and there's no excuse to be able to lean on as to why something might happen. There's not a cloud in the sky right now. The temperatures are perfect. This is the setup that we would hope for this final, and this is exactly what we've gotten. So there's no real viable excuse. This is all down to the men and women who have done the coding, designed and built the car, and now it's all up to the robot to make it happen.
Yep, it's kind of an odd feeling, right? You send this thing out on the track, and there's really not a lot you can do. Just say good luck, and I suppose it's always that way. But they're looking great here again. This similar car to what we saw with Purdue, and that are a similar system where they're just really, the car's on a great line. Maybe got a little bit wider there than what the other teams had done up the hill, but really nothing that you'd look at that you say is out of ordinary. So there's a lot of confidence that this car will just keep speeding up. And I suppose if they can get confirmation that they beat the time, if they can beat the time of Purdue, then they'll probably just shut down at that point, because you don't want to risk pushing it faster than you have to and then maybe bring out a red flag and lose that lap. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how they handle this.
So the time we are looking for is greater than 1:40.6. Meaning that there's quite a bit of speed to be found. The best time that we had earlier from them was a 1:31.7. It was slightly better than the best time from Purdue AI Racing. Now we're going to need a 1:40.6 or more. So again, it's a fairly high benchmark to have set, but that's the way this competition works. And although the cars are not out on track together head-to-head, as they have been in the past. The last event that we had, we did have car-on-car events where it was passing drills, and the speeds were regulated. You had a certain number of laps to try and pass the car ahead. The car that was leading had to defend without blocking, and it was a very fair competition, but that was a regulated speed. This is a no-holds-barred. This is a go as fast as you can, little car. And we really hope that it's more than 140.6 kilometers an hour, said the Polymove MSU team, because if that's the case, they find victory yet again. And this is a team, they know victory very well. I mean, Rob, they've got to come to these events and almost expect to win.
Yeah, I think they're pretty humble. Speaking to them, I agree. I mean, they had definitely a lot of experience, but these things can go wrong in a hurry in racing, and I think this team has done a good job of that as well, of kind of just keeping their expectations low. They're very calm students talking to them, which is really nice to see, right? But Purdue laid down an amazing lap, so I don't know if it's possible. Honestly, this is going to be a really pushing the limit of either one of these teams, obviously. So could go either way here. And this car looks like it's just slowly speeding up. It's using a little bit more of the racetrack here on this lap than it did previously. So I think it's just slowly coming through and speeding up, warming up the tires, and then it'll have at it.
Either way, either team that wins today will have earned the victory, no doubt about it, especially when you consider the technology, the steps, and the speed that we have seen. It's one thing to talk about going from racing on an oval, racing on Indy, racing on Vegas or Texas, to doing a lap at Monza, to doing a lap at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. The track evolution is mad. I mean, it's one of those things that you say it on paper and you think, yeah, okay. And then in practice, when it happens and it works, you sit there kind of dumbfounded because it worked. The next question is, where do we go from here? Because that jump in evolution has already been remarkable. And we saw the video of the car doing the Goodwood hill climb. How much better are we going to get in the next couple of years? We're going to be doing autonomous laps of the Nürburgring.
Sure. Yeah. The car's capable of doing all of that. The question will be, are they going to try to go into multi-car racing, which is, very difficult. But I think several of the teams are ready for that and really seek that, right? So there's this evolution. You can try to go faster and more tracks, or maybe try to even slow them down a little bit and try to get more cars on the track, because then it really adds a lot of complexity, right? Wow. And you kind of know the optimal line of a vehicle, but you might have to push it off its optimal line a little bit, just as you'd see, here on Saturday or Sunday. When you're watching the other drivers, all of that starts to come into play. So that ratchets up the complexity significantly when you have to try to predict where other cars are going to be on the track at any given time to try to pass them.
As you're talking about optimum line, the line being demonstrated by Polymove MSU for most of the corners in the back half of the track, starting with turn 6, up through the corkscrew, all the way down through turn 9, turn 10, even into turn 11. The choice that the robot was making for where to place the car was the best I've seen all day, using more of the track than anyone else, being less afraid of running wide, still not using the curbs because we don't want to shake the computers inside these cars, but getting close and getting close enough that if something were to twitch, the computer could catch it, but it would be fairly tight as to running out of pavement. I really like the lines we're seeing from this car now.
Yeah, and the cars are set up actually, they're raised up off the ground a good bit. There's not actually, and of course this is kind of the Speedway wing package that you might see on the Indy Next car. And so there's really not a lot of downforce in these cars either. So this is impressive. They're right kind of on the edge here, and it's just part of this competition, I guess, right? Is figuring all of that out and knowing where the edge is and trying to run right at it. And so, these guys are just looking great as they're running down down the hill down to the front straightaway. So it's really good to see. Last little blurb of data, it looked like it came through. They were about 5 seconds a lap slower still than Purdue. So we'll see how they come through. But I know they're still in warm-up phase.
And this is the start of lap number 4, so we should get this one and potentially more. But as you said, there's still quite a bit of pace that needs to be found, and maybe running the entirety of that opening section as Polymove MSU did, pushing for as long and as hard as they did, where remember, Purdue AI Racing set the lap and pitted. Maybe there's just a little bit less life in those Bridgestones. Maybe Purdue played a blinder and kept the tires to a slightly better peak, so they were able to get that second run. We could be seeing the start of a new era here for Purdue AI Racing, if indeed Polymove MSU is not able to respond.
In the last lap, Polymove knocked 2 more seconds basically off that lap, so they came in about a 1:33.7. So they're still, and then you're looking at Purdue AI was about a 1:30, right? So they're still about around 3 seconds off of the pace of Purdue AI. So they're looking really. I mean, Purdue's looking strong right now. This is not going to be easy to beat. 3 seconds is a lot, around a racetrack like this.
Yep, and to put it in terms of speed, it was 138.388 the last time around for this Polymove MSU. The car looks like it's going even quicker this time around. So we're getting close, but we're not there yet. Let's see if this lap can do it as the car crosses the line to finish lap number 4, beginning lap number 5. And we will let you know if that was an improvement, but the car has stayed in the throttle going into turn 2. Wow, great entrance into turn 2. Missed the apex by a lot on the entrance. It was a 39.301 that time around, so we're getting closer yet again, but we're still not there.
Knocked about 7/10 of a second off that lap time, so this is they're picking up. And I noticed as they came down the front straightaway, they were really kind of close to the wall at the start-finish line. So if their cars change the line, the start line or the start straight does curve a little bit. So it does look like their line is changing a little. So maybe we will come up and rival the time of Purdue AI.
That would explain why the line was slightly sloppier going into the Andretti hairpin, where it was off the apex by quite a bit more than I would have wanted it to be, but a nice run through the corkscrew and exited the corkscrew, got out of that new fresh pavement at the bottom a little bit early, but that's okay. Beautiful line through turn 9, using a lot of the exit. In through turn 10, still off the apex, but using the exit. I like the pattern of this car. If only it could tuck it in a little bit closer toward the apex of each of the corners, it would be a thing of pure beauty. All right, back onto the start-finish straight, which, as you pointed out, is not very straight. How close to the wall are we getting? Not bad.
A little bit faster. I'm looking at about a 140.5 kph there.
140.5
Yeah,
kph. That means we are a tenth of a kilometer an hour apart.
So we're right on it. So these two teams are very, very evenly matched. It's something to see.
We've got this lap and maybe one more.
Yeah, I would say they got to push it this lap, probably everything, because it's not guaranteed. And it depends if they, as long as they cross the line before the 12 minutes run goes over, then they get to finish that lap. So technically it can go a little bit more than 12 minutes.
Well, but it's one thing to finish the lap. It's another to think about the life of the tires. Not that Bridgestone would fall off after that few tires, but just the heat cycle and the constant, and it is constant because it's not a human. It is a robot. It's turning in at the same places that it's being told to. It's braking at the same places. That level of consistency would be less expected of the tires and how they've been developed. So we could be seeing a difference in tire wear because the tires on the Purdue car were just that slight bit newer, probably 3 or 4 laps newer than what we have for Polymove. Polymove coming around, braking hard for turn 11, making the left-hand turn, opening up the steering wheel once again for the start-finish straight. Now let's see how close we get to the wall. Does it readjust? Oh yeah, big dive towards the wall. And what kind of speed was it that time around? We wait for the computers to tell us. 140.785. That means that Polymove MSU is victorious once again.
Wow. Great run, and what a competition. I mean, these two have really picked it up, and they're so close to each other. The one thing they still do need to do, though, is bring this thing back home safely without pulling out a red flag, because otherwise they won't win. So it's not a given at this point. These
hang
cars
on.
are really pushing.
We might have had a faster time from Purdue AI Racing. 140.7 is currently showing as second fastest. We are waiting to validate the time from Purdue AI Racing to see what that speed was, but the car remains on it for Polymove MSU. 143.177 was the best time from Purdue AI Racing. So we do need a better time than what we have just seen from Polymove MSU. The car is still accelerating. It is still going around. How much time is left on the clock?
Sure, as they come through me here on the front straightaway. They're still on it.
Let's see.
Great.
This might be it. This might be the last opportunity for Polymove MSU. A 143.177, the best speed that we saw from Purdue AI Racing. We thought it was a 40.6. On their last flyer, it was a 43.177. 144.143 is the speed we just got from Polymove MSU, meaning that Polymove is indeed the fastest car of the weekend.
Wow. Yep.
Whew. They saved it for the end.
They still have to make it back to the pits, though, Shay.
So. That's a very, very good point. I'm not going to get overly excited yet. They needed that faster lap. They knew the time that they had to get. They got the time. We moved the time because we thought that the time was what it was. And apologies to everyone at home. And apologies to Polymove for thinking that they had it when they didn't. Hopefully they knew better than we did, though.
Yeah, I think they have all the telemetry down in the pits, so that wouldn't have been an issue. Yeah, I see that there was one more lap on Purdue AI that that was a little higher than the one we saw. So,
but they did it
wonderful.
by 1 kilometer an hour. And they are now coming back into the pit lane. This very tricky pit lane. It's downhill. It's a weird camber. Car lines up, makes the hard crank towards the left, gets around the corner, and comes back. Has to come to a stop in front of its team, where the universities will be waiting to celebrate.
What a great job. I think we really saw something special right there between both of those teams. They just, I mean, really pushing the limit and did what you would think is that, you know, you wouldn't have known that wasn't a human in there, honestly. You know, you could see a couple spots where you could get a little bit closer to that rumble strip, but the risk is high, right, if you get there. And so they really, congratulations to them really and all the teams, because they really did a great job of adapting to this new conditions and this new track, and you know, designing algorithms specifically for it, especially if they're losing GPS and things that under some of the bridges around this track. There's just really difficult challenges that they ran into, and of course the track itself, just this iconic place being so difficult in certain sections. It's wonderful to see how they progressed and put on a great show today.
They really did. And now this crew will go over to celebrate at the podium, which is honestly why everyone goes racing. So congratulations, as it is now official. Polymove MSU, the fastest time of the weekend of our time trial portion. Purdue AI Racing, a brilliant job to bring it home in second. Third was Kaist. Again, really excellent move up from them in the standings. Pleased with where they were able to go. Fourth was IU Luddy on a bit of a recovery drive after the car stopped out on track. In fifth, Cavalier Autonomous Racing. And then in sixth was AI Racing Tech. They started the day for us, and they showed that the car can get around all of our cars doing more than 100 kilometers an hour, driving autonomously. Just want to point that out again. All 8 cars managed to get out on the track and get above that speed, but only 6 of them registering times by the end of the day. Well, Rob, are you pleased with what we saw today?
Yeah, I'm always overwhelmed to see this. You know, it's been a long 5 years really in the making, right? I watched these teams grow and the cars progress, the series progress. It's just super impressive to see the laps. I didn't expect them to be anywhere near this, to be honest with you. I mean, I knew the teams were up to the task, but it's just such a difficult challenge to navigate these corners and under the heavy braking that they have to do. And did it really look? They made it look flawless. I mean, made it look easy somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just it's amazing to see, and you know, to realize there is no driver in that thing, and the car is doing what it needs to do. Right. It's just super impressive. I'm excited to see what happens in the future of this series, and of course, you know, I think these students that come through this program are going to be amazing as they get out in the industry because of the opportunity that they've been given by the IAC.
It's only helping everyone, and I mean it. The people at home, our current technology, everyone benefits from what these young men and women are doing here today, what they've been doing for the past 5 years, the growth in the series as we've been able to see it, the accomplishments that when we first started, it was a question of could we make the car go over 100 kilometers an hour. Now it's going over 100 kilometers an hour on a racetrack that is one of the most famous in the world for one of the most difficult corners in the world. But that's what we were able to do today, and all of the cars were able to get above that threshold of 100 kilometers an hour, and then some. And then it got really, really interesting. So I love the boundaries that we were able to push with the Indy Autonomous Challenge, the different tracks that we keep going to, and the opportunities it's giving to so many different people. This is the technology of now. It's not even the technology of the future. And to see what people are able to do just by a little bit of passion, as you put it earlier, it really is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's a great lineup of three wonderful cars there, right in front of, I guess, victory lane in a way, right? So
yep.
they're gonna the podium, and congratulations to Kaist, by the way. I mean, they were just really strong, put in solid laps, and to score third place it was not easy, and they did it, and really, really impressive. And so it'll be a long flight home for them, but they should be pretty proud of what they did here today because they really put on a great show.
Yeah, it makes the plane ride home a lot sweeter when you've gotten to taste some of the proverbial champagne and know that you've done basically what you set out to do. Yeah, it's not a win, but third up against the competition that we saw today, that might as well be a win. That was an impressive display, and for those young men and women, they should be very proud of what they were able to accomplish. And moreover, all three of the cars sitting in victory lane, the wheels are pointed in the right direction. There's nothing technologically that needs to be worked on, mechanically that needs to be worked on. Yeah, the coating can always be improved, and there's always going to be ways to make this better. But what they did today is what they set out to do, and that is worthy of celebration.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool moment yesterday to see some of the haulers come in from the IndyCar series and the Indy Next series and watch the students' reactions, that they were going to have to try to perform in front of these professional teams. And so I was really excited for them, right, to see the outcome here, that they did a great job. And I know the IAC mechanics will be really happy that they don't have any major crashes to clean up here today too. And everybody did a great job, and hard to argue with the results here. And not totally unexpected to see a Polymove MSU in victory lane, but Purdue AI Racing made it really close, and they have to be proud. I'm excited to see, who will be the winner of the next event, right? And kind of which teams will come on strong. And it's like we were saying earlier, it's never guaranteed that you're going to continue the strength as your best students go off and graduate. Very difficult to maintain this, and so this series kind of naturally will, the teams will sort of ebb and flow up and down because of the way the universities work. So even if you finish last today, there's a chance you can win the next race, right? It's just you're going to keep pushing, and so excited for the students that are involved in this. It's been just a wonderful event.
Well, and we say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but look at Caltech. They had a car that was way competitive. They didn't actually get the lap time because they caused a red flag. They are somebody who I would expect to be right thereabouts for the win at the next competition that we have. So you say you can finish last in this one and win the next one. I fully believe that that is possible, and I'm expecting to see not just 2, 3, maybe even 4 teams going for the win at the next one. It'll be 6, 8, maybe even all 10 will be at that level.
Yeah, no doubt. They're really impressive. So you can just remember back to the first time seeing these cars run at Indianapolis, right, and going through the corner at high speed, and having engineered these, and wondering, are they actually going to hold? Is the steering going to hold? Is the steering going to be fast enough? And all of these things, and they did, of course, right, and then to get to where we are today, several years later, to where the cars are refined to the point where they can really push the limits on a road course. It's just been pretty exciting to see. It's a great job by the whole Indy Autonomous Challenge and all of its supporting partners.
Yeah, Paul Mitchell, you should be very proud of what you have put together, and I know that the podium ceremonies are about to begin, so please take it away and give these young people the accolades that they so rightly deserve.
Thank you very much. What a spectacular day. What a great month it's been here at the WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. I want to say a big thanks to Laguna Seca, the entire team, Mel Harder, for welcoming us here. It was a bit of a last-minute add to our schedule, and we figured out how to get the testing done. We had teams here for over 2 months trying to get testing days to prepare for this. Special thanks to our sponsors for this event, General Motors. What a great brand that's got such a history in racing and motorsport, such a partnership with the NTT IndyCar Series. To have General Motors alongside our team, supporting the talent, just meant the world. Thank you to all of the teams. They put in an incredible amount of work. This is a year-round activity, even though this series only has 2 or 3 races a year. Believe me, they are putting in the same amount of hours that professional racing teams are, preparing and developing their software and their algorithms. For our first road course event in the United States, we went out and picked pretty much the most technical, one of the hardest racetracks. We wanted to show what the technology is capable of and how far we're coming. And we had some great results today. I know all the teams, most teams over the last couple of days achieved an ability to run, in some cases, for the first time on road courses. So this was a real big challenge. Some of the other teams have been doing this before at our races in Monza. But now's the moment to get to the award ceremony. So in third place, I want to welcome the team from Korea, Kaist, David and his group. Kaist has been an outstanding performer in Indy Autonomous Challenge from the beginning. Honestly, they haven't had as many podiums as I believe they absolutely deserve, so it's thrilling to have them finally be at this point. So thank you, David, for all you do, and congratulations. Thank you, guys. Anybody want to say anything? David?
Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate all the great work you guys did and all the great teams. I think everybody's going really great. It's very hard to keep up, but I believe that we're going to do a really great time, and I really thank Paul having all these things. You are inspiring everybody in the world on the autonomous racing, so we hope to continue this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations. Something tells me there's going to be a really large group about to come up here. What can I say? So first of all, Indy Autonomous Challenge, for those of you that don't know, we were born and raised in the state of Indiana. We are so pleased to have this opportunity to race on the same weekend as the NTT IndyCar Series. A big thanks to Mark Miles and Doug Bowles and the team at IndyCar for supporting us over the years, watching us grow, watching the improvement in the quality of the racing, and recognizing we were at a point that we could share the same track, the same weekend as the world's fastest human-driven cars. It's really an honor. And coming from Indiana, it means a lot to have a team in Indiana that is elite. We have two of them, Purdue and IU, but I want to say a word. Purdue University, over the last 12 months, has gone through a total reorganization of their team. And what this shows you is that if you put the right ingredients together, you get the right talent, the right faculty involvement, the right support all the way from the top, from the president of the university, the dean, the alumni, the industry sponsors, you can see an exponential jump in performance. This is a team that 2 years ago was really struggling to participate in this competition, and now they're if not the top, certainly one of the top teams in the U.S. And they came in second by just less than a second, which is just incredible against the longtime champs of Polymove MSU. So second place, the Purdue Autonomous Racing Team. Go Boilers. Feel free, keep coming. Come on, Greg. Absolutely incredible run. Does anybody want to say a word? Dan, you want to say something?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Paul. And the first thing we have to say is every time we come to one of these events, it just amazes me the job that IAC does to put this on. And it just all comes together and all works well. And I know that doesn't just happen. A lot of little things that we don't even understand, take thought and take time, and you guys do it all. So thanks for that. And the last thing I want to do is just brag on my guys and my gal here a little bit. I'll let you know where we were. We had it calculated that second to last lap was all the car had. We thought the last lap was a little too much. We were watching it in the room, and we had high slips, and we had a big deviation, and these guys called it. I mean, they absolutely knew what that car had, and they grabbed it. So there they are.
Congrats. Again, it really does mean a lot to see the progress that teams can make, right? This competition has 10 teams that are incredibly dedicated, and at any point in time, these teams can jump the ladder. I think we saw some great performances today from some of our teams. Really some outstanding laps that were being run by the team from Caltech, our newest team. So really great progress that's being made. But with I think their sixth victory, is that right? Is it six? Sixth victory, sixth podium victory. The team from Polymove MSU represent Polytechnic Milano and Michigan State University. Please come on up for yet another win in the Indy Autonomous Challenge. Congratulations, guys. Another victory. Anybody want to say a few words? Somebody? Search. Who's going to? Somebody.
I didn't do much. So thanks, of course, to Paul, the IAC. Great event for us here. Great experience at Laguna Seca. I think all the teams walk away with a lot of new knowledge, really added to the experience. This team of students is amazing. These are some of the best students I've ever had the opportunity to be around and work around. And I enjoy every minute that I get to spend with them, and just happy to be any part of this team at all.
Special thanks. You've heard some of the congratulations and the thank you for the Indy Autonomous Challenge team. I don't know if you can get a shot, but the hardest working team in autonomous motorsport is standing right over there. For those of you that follow what we do, we had essentially a double header. We had an exhibition race with a couple of our teams at the Monza circuit in Italy, and quite literally the day after that event was done, several of these team members flew on a plane to Laguna Seca for practice the next day. So the incredible team doing a lot with very little. So thank you for the Indy Autonomous Challenge team. That's it. We've got a great weekend of racing happening here at the WeatherTech Laguna Seca Raceway, the NTT IndyCar Series, the Indy Next Series, which is the same chassis you see here, driven by human drivers. What an honor to share a weekend with these amazing elite professional racing series. Hopefully more to come of that. Indy Autonomous Challenge running together with IndyCar in the future, not too distant future. So thank you all, and signing off. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for a perfectly executed podium celebration. I think we're seeing the very early signs of some very bad hangovers from some of our competitors. And how did we get here today? Well, we had 8 different autonomous vehicles that took to the racetrack. All 8 of them were able to get above 100 kilometers an hour. It was a difficult day for the Tigers as they wound up in the gravel at the top of the corkscrew. They weren't the only ones who struggled a bit as a couple more cars came to rest on the side of the racetrack, a very scary moment as one of the cars wound up sideways at the corkscrew the lap before it attempted to make a right-hand turn, but managed to continue. And a couple of cars struggling to get around, but they all managed to continue, and 6 of the 8 set times. The most impressive time early on was from Purdue AI, but it was ultimately, at the end of the day, a shootout with Polymove MSU. And once again, the team that found victory in more competitions than any other came home with the biggest trophy. Congratulations to Polymove MSU, all of their students and faculty, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. For now, thank you for joining us for the Indy Autonomous Challenge.